Good evening, council, staff, and members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the regular meeting to order, please? I have councillors Fisher and Garwood that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of July 3rd, 2024 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Please join me in the singing of our national anthem.
Okay. Of home and native land, true faith, true love, in all of men. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, hear our land. Glory out and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And not seeing any, may I have a mover and seconder to call our public meeting to order, please? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander. That this public meeting of council held under section 34 of the Planning Act for zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2024-012 by Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of Mr. Ices be called to order at 6:33 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Welcome to this public meeting of Springwater Township Council held in compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views and in regard to the proposed amendment to the Township of Springwater zoning bylaw as amended. The first part of this meeting is to present the amendment. Following, the public will be given an opportunity to make an oral submission through the Zoom application or in person. Any person wishing to make an oral submission is to have had notified the township prior to 8:30 a.m. this morning and been added to the commenters list. If a person or public body who has filed an appeal of the decision of the Township of Springwater with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission to the township before the proposed zoning amendment has passed, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss all or parts of the appeal. All comments or questions should be addressed through the chair. Oral submissions will be included in the meeting minutes and form part of the public record, including the name, address of the speaker. It is as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be presented and posted to the township website. This evening, we have ZB 2024-012 at 543 Ann Street North. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of the meeting and the dates to which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 13th day of June, 2024 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 389 properties in the Township of Springwater and City of Barrie within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location visible from Ann Street North. Notice was also posted on the township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority in an email dated June 18th, 2024, from TransCanada Pipelines Limited in an email dated June 18th, 2024, and from Enbridge Gas in an email dated June 19th, 2024. All of this evening's correspondence can be found attached to the agenda.
Thank you. I will now call upon Darren Bella to outline the the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment.
Evening, Your Worship, members of council. Thanks for the introduction. I'm here to introduce Cynthia DeFern. She is a junior planner in my office and she's going to be making the presentation this evening. This is her first presentation in Springwater Township, so I'm here just to provide her any assistance that she may need and to answer any questions of council if any do arise. So with that, Cynthia, go ahead.
Your worship, council, staff, and members of the public, good evening. My name is Cynthia Daffern from Innovative Planning Solutions. We are here to talk about zoning bylaw amendment application for 543 Ann Street North. I'm here on behalf of our client, Ices Farms Limited, a bona fide farmer with land holdings in Springwater and throughout Simcoe County. I will be presenting a brief overview of the zoning bylaw amendment application. Next slide, please. As noted, the subject property, as highlighted in yellow on this slide, is located at 543 Ann Street North, just outside of the city of Barrie. The total site is approximately 42 hectares with approximately 563 meters of frontage along Ann Street North. The lands contain one single detached dwelling and detached garage and are primarily used for agricultural crop field farming. As you can see in the image above, the property is mainly surrounded by agricultural uses and the city of Barrie to the south. Next slide, please. These maps show the current official plan designation and zoning of the subject lands. The lands are designated agricultural in the township's official plan, and the lands are currently zoned agricultural in the township's bylaw. Next slide, please. The intent of this application is to facilitate the severance of parcel A from parcel B as shown on this map. Parcel A is a surplus farm dwelling, while parcel B will continue to be used for agricultural purposes. Consent application B09/24 was conditionally approved in March of 2024, which will sever parcel A from parcel B if the conditions required by the township are met. Condition 5 is that the parcel B lands must be rezoned from the agricultural zone to the agricultural consolidation zone, prohibiting future residential uses. Next slide, please. To reiterate, in order to clear condition 5, parcel B lands must be rezoned from agricultural to agricultural consolidation. This will not change the current use of the site, rather it will prevent the site from being developed further and maintain existing agricultural use long term. In addition, we ask that parcel A be rezoned from agricultural to agricultural with special provisions to permit a new accessory building on the property. Next slide, please. The severed residential parcel must be rezoned from agricultural to agricultural with special provisions to increase the total floor area of to accommodate a request to increase in the total floor area of all accessory buildings. Agricultural zones have a maximum gross floor area for accessory buildings of 115 square meters. A proposed accessory building is requested with a floor area of approximately 118.5 square meters. With the existing detached garage, the total area of these buildings combined is just over 193 square meters. As a result, an additional 80 square meters of accessory floor area is requested in order to facilitate the construction of the new shed. The residential lands must be rezoned from agricultural to agricultural with special provisions. Next slide, please. Overall, the agricultural special provision zoning will not change the current residential use of the site on parcel A. No impacts to their surrounding areas are expected, and it will increase the functionality of the site by permitting a new shed for use by the residents. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the intent of the subject application is to facilitate a zoning bylaw amendment on lands located at 543 Ann Street North, The proposed rezoning does not intend to change the current use of the lands on parcel A or parcel B. And it will permit the farmer to sever the associated dwelling on parcel A while keeping the agricultural portion of the land, parcel B, within the holdings of a bona fide farming operation. It will permit the construction of a larger accessory building or shed on the non-farm parcel, parcel A, and it will not negatively impact the natural character of the surrounding area, and it is not an intrusion of an incompatible land use. Collectively, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment represents good planning according to both provincial and municipal policies. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Cynthia, for your presentation. At this time, I will now call upon our moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions or make comments regarding the application. Moderator.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been no members of the public who have registered to make any oral submissions for this application.
Thank you. I will now turn to members of the public to see if there are any comments or questions regarding this application. And not seeing any at this time, I can turn to members of council to see if there's any comments or questions regarding this application. Councillor Fisher?
Just, I think it was fairly well explained in your presentation, but just to confirm, with these changes that you're proposing, no acreage would be taken out of agricultural production by the looks of it. No significant amounts anyway.
Okay. Ms. Stafford?
Through your worship to the councillor, there will be no changes in acreage from the agricultural portion.
Okay. Councillor, are there any further questions or comments on this application? Deputy Corral?
I'm sorry, I may have missed it, but what would the purpose of the accessory building be? Would it be for livestock, crop storage, chemical storage? I'm just curious on what you're going to be putting in there.
Thank you.
Through your worship to the councillor, deputy mayor rather, it would be used as a shed and also to sell flowers through sort of roadside flower sales.
Okay, thank you.
Not seeing anything further. Thank you to all who participated in the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and for showing an interest in this matter. Council, at this time, I will look for a mover and seconder to adjourn the public meeting. I have Councillor Garwood and Councillor Moore. That this public meeting of council held under section 34 of the Planning Act for ZB 2024-012543 Ann Street North does now adjourn at 6:46 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much. Council, we are now moving on to our direction following the public meeting. May I have a mover and seconder, please? I have Councillors Fisher and Moore that the report from the junior planner regarding ZB 2024-012 dated July 3rd, 2024 be received and that bylaw 5000-392 be presented to council for consideration of approval on July 3rd, 2024, subject to comments received during the public meeting. If there's any questions or comments? And not seeing any, all those in favor? And that has carried. I will now call upon Julie Cayley to present from the SSV. Please come forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, Council, staff, and guests tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about water quality, an update on water quality in Orr Lake. And I've brought one of our brilliant interns who's leaving us soon, Sarah Song, with me to make sure she'll kick me under the table if I'm getting off track or possibly not sticking to the science, because this isn't, as you might know, my normal approach to all of you. So shocking, I won't be asking you for money tonight. Next slide, please. So Orr Lake's an important part of Springwater. I think you all know that. It's a shallow warm water lake fed mainly by surface water and some groundwater and is the main headwaters of the Wye River. It's been experiencing lake health issues, including a now established invasive zebra mussel population and a significant toxic blue-green algae bloom in 2023. Next slide, please. The area surrounding and draining into Orr Lake, which is known as the watershed. The land use is a mix of residential, agricultural, forest with a golf course and provincial highway on the northeast end and mostly undeveloped southwest shoreline. The maximum depth is about 3 meters and the fetch or the longest distance across the lake is 2.47 kilometers. Next slide, please. So the SSCA monitors Orr Lake for nutrients, algae, phytoplankton, zooplankton. Zooplankton eat the phytoplankton. Water clarity, dissolved oxygen, a number of other parameters. And it's a mix of these parameters that help us understand the health of the lake. We do this on a 5-year rotation, which is currently under review. Next slide, please. This slide just shows you the sampling stations. You can see the red dots are sampling stations. So there's one at the center, the deepest point of the lake, and then some of the rivers, select rivers that are providing inputs to the lake. Next slide, please. So lake health is complex. Like I mentioned, Orr Lake is a warmer lake, so warm temperatures favor certain fish species as well as blue-green algae growth. Dissolved oxygen does drop under ice. We do some winter sampling as well. And low dissolved oxygen is not good for fish and can promote the release of phosphorus. And phosphorus is a nutrient that feeds plants and algae. Next slide, please. Like many Ontario lakes, we're also seeing a steady increase in sodium and chloride, so salt, in our lake, and something we see especially in urbanizing areas near roadways. Septic effluent can also be a source where water softeners are used and are not being diverted from the system. These high and increasing levels will negatively impact freshwater organisms in the lake and can be a concern for people who are using treated lake water for drinking water. Next slide, please. So Orr Lake is an aquatic plant-dominated, moderately enriched, so nutrients are, we refer to enrichment, with an increasing occurrence of concerning blue-green algae blooms. These blooms can be triggered by elevated nutrient levels, so this could be from runoff during rain events, from land, shoreline erosion, malfunctioning septic systems, and climate conditions of calm water, warm, high temperature. So this week is ideal for blue-green algae blooms. And zebra mussels who are now established in the lake, the invasive zebra mussel, they can shift the nutrient and algae balance through their filter feeding. In some areas, it's been found in Lake Erie, for instance, that they actually can promote blue-green algae blooms because they selectively reject that type of phytoplankton. They don't like it because it's toxic, so they spit it back out and it ends up, you get a more concentration in the lake. SSEA has in-house equipment and expertise, although we're losing some of the expertise soon unless we can make her stay. For early real-time detection of toxic blooms. So we have some new equipment over the last year. And in fact, our staff are out today doing a quick sample just to make sure we're keeping an eye on whether or not we're seeing a bloom. Next slide, please. So just some brief things that folks can do if they're interested in reducing the possibility of nuisance and toxic blue-green algae blooms. Maintaining healthy native aquatic plant communities. So those plants will use up those nutrients. They need them to grow. And that would also prevent the dominance of these blooms. So don't remove the bulrushes or the wild rice. They're supposed to be there. Preventing invasive species, so clean, drain, dry watercraft before going from one lake or a pond or a river to another. Watercraft includes a canoe, it includes a sea-doo, it includes a paddleboard. All activities on the land around the lake impact the lake. So the more the land is hardened, the more the runoff there will be. So extra attention is needed to reduce nutrients and other contaminants from getting into the lake. And we can do that by avoiding the use of fertilizers on lawns, especially near the shoreline and near rivers and ditches, ensuring that septic systems are working, inspecting them, fixing them, maintaining them. And this is really critical, especially as there are more and more full-time homes on the lake. And restoring and maintaining a natural shoreline. So in 2024, the SSEA, we were able to secure some external funding to implement a program called Restore the Shore, which Sarah has been implementing for us. Next slide, please. And through this program, our staff have been working with landowners on lakes and rivers to help restore and protect their shoreline. So staff, particularly Sarah, go on site, help develop a planting plan, and the project provides some cost share for the plants and the follow-up site visits. And we do have a waiting list right now, so we would encourage anyone watching or anyone who knows anyone on Orr Lake or any of the rivers flowing into Orr Lake to please get in touch and get on that list. And we're certainly looking at how we can extend that program into the coming years. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll leave it nice and short, I hope. If there's any questions, Your Worship, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I will just have council receive this and then we will move into that. So just that the delegation from the Severn Sound Environmental Association regarding an update on Orr Lake water quality be received. And I just need a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Alexander and Councillor Garwood. And at this time, I'll open it up to council for questions or comments. Councillor Alexander.
I'll just make a comment. Thank you both for coming. I always learn something new. I actually have known there's been zebra mussel problems in Orr Lake for quite a few years. I did not realize though that they potentially are part of the problem with blue-green algae, which seems to be becoming more prominent of an issue. So that's interesting to know. And I did want to thank you for just providing the education to the residents to allow them to know the small things that they can change that will make a difference. They live on that lake and live there because they want to enjoy it. So I think that's really important that they understand there's some really little easy things they can do. And yeah, I encourage anyone are out there to contact you for the Restore the Shore program. It's a great program. And I love the grassroots approach of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And before I do move to Councillor Garwood, I guess through to CEO Schmidt, is there an opportunity for our communications department to collaborate with the SSEA to get this pushed out? Understanding that this is the time. So if we can get that pushed out, that would be CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Absolutely. I'll have a discussion with our communication staff and ensure that we partner with our friends at SSEA.
Thank you for that. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Thank you both for being here. More of a comment, I consistently learn more every time that you're here. You've been a frequent flyer of the Annville Community Hall in the last few months or so, and doing community outreach. So thank you for choosing Springwater, but also echoing what Councillor Alexander has said. I think the work that you collectively do as a team is so important. I've said this to your staff many times, looking at all the graphs and charts and lines. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me sometimes, but I'm happy that we have partners like yourselves and your staff that can help guide this council. So thank you.
Not seeing anything further at this time. So that the delegation from the Severn Sound Environmental Association regarding an update on Orr Lake water quality be received. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much. And I would wish you best luck in all your endeavors, but from what Julie is saying, we really want you to stay. Council, we are now moving on to our question period, and I will turn to Clerk Ainsworth to see if there has been any submissions received.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been no submissions received for this evening's meeting.
I will now turn to members of the public. If there's any comments or questions to be brought forward to council. And not seeing any at this time, we will move on to our item 8 is our minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to council to approve the minutes, please? I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral that the minutes of council listed here and be approved as presented. We have the minutes of the special meeting of council of June 12th, 2024. 2, the minutes of the special meeting of council, closed session of June 12th, 2024. 3, the minutes of special meeting of council of June 19th, 2024. 4, the minutes of special meeting of council, closed session of June 19th, 2024. And 5, the minutes of the regular meeting of council, June 19th, 2024. Council, are there any questions on any of these minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. At this time, we'll move on to our action reports, and I will call upon Director Culver to make a presentation, please.
Members of council, figured I'd come up here into the kill zone. If the CAO is brave enough to do it, I can do it too. Wanted to say thanks for allowing me to present for a couple of consecutive meetings, and it's nice to know I haven't worn out my welcome yet. This presentation speaks to one of the larger undertakings this community will experience, and it's a project that leaves an important and very long-term legacy. It's perfectly understandable that the decisions you faced and will face are daunting. This presentation, the report you've received, and the recommendation provided by staff are all designed to help build confidence in knowing that we're working towards a destination, while at the same time ensuring that council has sufficient and appropriate opportunities to review progress through the project lifespan. We also need you to make important decisions that will be required for us to succeed collectively. Next slide, please. First of all, a little bit of background that you're probably already very well aware of. Since acquiring the 20-hectare site in 2018, the township has been seeking to construct a community hub that would offer a broad array of services that supports all of Springwater. Access to the Highway 26 Bayfield corridor, as well as the current increasing density of Midhurst and Snow Valley areas of Springwater, make the site desirable and strategically located with respect to such influences as commercial integration and impacts, future transit access, active transportation opportunities, and the preservation of green space in an increasingly urbanized environment. All considerations of the community have acknowledged that the hub is an expansion of Springwater's recreation capacity and is not a replacement of current assets. Next slide, please. Given that the investment that is required for this 50 to 100-year community legacy, it's imperative that a conscientious process is followed. This will make sure that the current and future needs are identified through a database approach that involves comprehensive public engagement and research, that the future growth of the community is considered in the long-range plans for this facility, that carefully developed business plans identify both risks and opportunities for good decision-making by council at every opportunity. Next slide, please. Stage gating is a way to ensure that we, the council, the public, and staff are all moving forward collectively and conscientiously towards a well-understood end goal. There's no way to see that destination at the outset. Each stage along the project path will yield more insight, and all of these are opportunities for conscientious decisions by council. The work has been started. However, stage gating provides a pathway for all of us to understand and utilize. Ultimately, the goal is to arrive at an outcome that is well-informed and does our very best to meet the broadest array of needs for the community at large, now and in the future. A stage-gated process does this by breaking the project down into distinct stages, arranged in the appropriate order that will provide the right information for council to use in its decisions at the right time. The community hub is a large and complex concept, and as mentioned earlier, one of the most significant investments that Springwater will make. It's important to provide milestones that are a collection of information and outcomes gathered to that point to support you as council and ensure that the community is aware of the project's progress, as well as opportunities for their input into that process. In a stage-gated format, you are provided with all that the previous stage has yielded in terms of developed information. This allows you to collectively determine one of three directions. Whether we continue to the next stage, knowing what the costs and expected outcomes can be, whether the project needs modification in the next stage to adapt to the information that was acquired in the previous stage, or whether it's time to stop the project altogether, which can possibly not be due to the project itself, but due to environmental influences, a COVID type event or something, which has happened in the past several years. Next slide, please. Makes it really hard for me to read. This is very small type. So this is a graphic snapshot of the process that is subject to refinement with the onboarding of a consultant firm that has deeper expertise in this scope of project management. You'll note that stage one is the Weston project that provides visioning and some high-level master planning of the site. Well, staff are working through the finalization of that Weston project draft report in order to present to council later in the summer. In the interest of expediting and clarifying how we move forward, we thought it appropriate to recommend council's approval of a stage-gated method and continue with our forward momentum. As mentioned earlier, council will have control over each gate in the process. So in terms of expense, the only stage we're looking at tonight is stage two. Stage two will include such elements as a functional programming study. And this is a functional program describes requirements in which a building must satisfy in order to support and enhance the purpose for which it's built. The study works to answer the following questions. What is the nature and scope of all of the facility parameters? What are the data-informed client needs? And what opportunities exist within this scope? In simple terms, it's how will this facility function to serve the needs of the stakeholders? Another element of phase two is architectural massing for fit and form. So this uses massing, which is effectively a blocking process, some of which will come from the Weston project to start an architectural process that identifies the space needed to accomplish the functions identified in that functional programming study. It'll also identify some of the architectural built form that the facility might take, and that's actually a really exciting part of the process because that's when you actually start to see what it really might look like. It also offers the opportunity to comment on what you see and adapt as we go. So you'll see this piece of information by the end of that step and have the opportunity to comment, agree, disagree. It provides a traction point. Stage two will also include a business case for both operating and capital expenses, including a Class D capital cost estimate. This is the first test of feasibility from which we expect lots of questions to come from council and the public, which will also help us to determine the next steps. And in order to achieve this next level of detail by the end of stage 2, there will be further stakeholder consultation and third-party discussions, which will include well-promoted and broadcast public open houses for soundboarding and feedback around theories and concept plans, workshops with such third parties as minor sports, adult organizations, group representative of the older adult sector, potential partner organizations, and more. Staff are seeking to begin developing a funding plan framework. This will continue in the background of all of the stages, assuming council's approval of this process continuation, and includes such considerations as upper tier funding opportunities, regional support for an operating business plan, private donor capacity, and strategies like that. Once a consultant firm is onboarded, a further revision of the process you see in front of you would be provided to council and speak more clearly regarding the content of future phases or stages. You'll also notice, it's kind of hard to see, but you'll also notice the lighter blue arrow that staff have included, which touches at the end of stage 2 and continues beyond stage 4. Final construction of a facility often feels like the last step. However, it's important to acknowledge that the commissioning and operationalization of a facility is a complicated and intensive part of the process. It's not only where learning, adjusting, and perfecting various building systems occurs, but it's also where council determines the level of service provided by the facility and what would be needed to support that level of service. As this is of key interest throughout the project process, we've included it in the background of all of the phases to final construction. Next slide, please. Council had previously asked about the capacity of the township to fund a project of the scale of the community hub. The staff report that you have in front of you details this capacity very well. And this slide provides a bit of a higher level view. In a nutshell, the township is in good financial position with a number of funding possibilities. Some preliminary work by the Director of Finance has identified generally some scenarios that will accommodate the continuation of the project process should council approve this today. As the development of the community hub proceeds, the gating or council decision points will continue to provide opportunities to refine council's awareness and understanding, as well as our available array of financial options. Next slide. So this report to council includes or indicates staff's recommendation to proceed to acquiring professional support for the development process via a group purchasing organization or a GPO. Staff are recommending this approach to help ensure highly qualified candidates are considered to meet the complexity and scope of this development process. Staff further recommend that the candidate is acquired to support the development process to completion, in other words, through all stages. The pricing of each stage will be presented to council at their prescribed decision point for transparency and awareness. An all-stop direction of council would cease the consultant costs prior to engagement of the next stage. Further supporting information is included in the staff report, but generally, we have acknowledged that the advantages of a GPO include timeliness, access to a broader set of qualifications and expertise, the pre-qualification of vendors through competitive processes, and support that can be implemented throughout the duration of the hub project. Last slide. So I hope this presentation was helpful toward building confidence in seeing a destination that includes a facility that meets current public expectation, is future ready, and has been guided by a conscientious council representing their constituents well. And I'm happy to have any questions.
Thank you, Director Culver. At this time, I'm going to ask council to have a mover and seconder with the resolution. I have councillors Thompson and Deputy Cabral. That the report from the Director of Recreation, Parks and Facilities regarding the stage gating approach to the Community Hub project dated July 3rd, 2024 be received, and that council directs staff to utilize the stage gated approach to develop and construct Springwater's Community Hub, and that council authorize staff to engage the project management services through Kinetic GPO cooperative purchasing program, and that council directs staff to report back to council at each appropriate decision points on the stage gated approach. And at this time, I will turn to members of council. Councillor Fisher.
Through you to Mr. Culver. I was wondering if you could just a little bit more in depth, can you explain for us and for the public how you see this increasing production, and also how you see it, how you see cost savings within this, the build? Thank you.
Director Culver?
Through your worship, so the first question is, sorry, the first question part, I gotta.
Of course, increased production, moving the project along.
Thank you. So the challenge with a project of this scope and size is always council and staff fulfilling their roles. Like, so staff has to provide the direction and staff have to ask the questions that get the direction. What the stage gating approach does is it creates a pathway where we understand what those expectations are throughout. And so we get direction from the start. And the only thing that needs to be addressed is how that direction shifts at each of those gate points. So it makes things move quicker because you're working through a commonly understood formula versus, us doing a reporter study and then coming back and saying, well, what do you want here? Or how do we do this? Or getting information that may be contradictory to the last information. And it just creates speed bumps and a bit of a cyclical, like a little bit of a cyclical problem as we go down the path of the process without having that sort of laid out in front of us. So that's why it actually helps to expedite a project of this scope and magnitude to completion. It doesn't take away your ability to make decisions throughout. In fact, it prescribes those decisions throughout, but it does make it gives us a common direction to work with out of the first gate. And then the cost savings piece, truthfully, again, it's hard to talk cost savings when you're talking about a project of this scope and magnitude, because you'd be looking at comparators. And I've never come across in my career, I've never come across two community facilities of this nature that are identical. And so where I think it saves money is, again, in that sort of those little whirlpools that you would take along the way. You're basically redoing work over and over and over again, instead of saying we're moving in a linear path. That's where I think cost savings occurs, but quantifying that is very difficult because I'd have to know what the end result was in order to backtrack and say what we've saved. Does that make sense?
Somewhat.
Apologies.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you very much. Mayor Coughlin, through you to Director Culver. A couple of things in the presentation. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Number one, are you proposing that we RFP to a professional project management firm at this stage? You are?
Yes.
Okay. And then number two, using kinetic GPO for group purchasing power, you're proposing $150,000 for that. And I'm a little confused on why we're looking at group purchasing power right now when we're still, sort of beginning stages. And the third thing is we've done a ton of work already. So I am hoping when you talk about public consultations and going back out and gathering research that you're able to go back and use, some of that information we've already gathered.
Director Culver?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So again, so the group purchasing organization, it's best not to think of this as us leveraging group purchasing at this point. Group GPOs are a tool you use to acquire to do purchasing at this stage. It's not about sort of using group purchasing to get buying power to buy a cheaper community hub, for example. It's really about an opportunity. The larger firms are part of the roster of these GPOs. And so what we're looking at is the most expedient way for us to get to accessing that expertise, because the alternative is for us to take several months to kind of develop a very spec'd out RFP where what we don't know typically causes challenges in that acquisition. So we know we need a professional, and we're looking for that professional to provide us with good advice based on a track record of having provided that advice. For me, I have experience, but not, I would say, sufficient experience to spec out exactly what I'm asking for, create a competitive process. That would take literally months to do. And so that's what a GPO does for us. It works through that first part of creating a competitive process because they've done that. And then what we have is access to the raw intelligence from which we can say, hey, this is what we're looking for. And then they tell us what their expertise can tell us about how to best accomplish that. Again, I'm having a hard time explaining, I think, but hopefully that makes a bit of sense.
Follow on, Council Moore.
Thank you. So what the pieces I'm missing is the cost for the professional project management firm. And then the $150,000 for the GPO. What are we getting? What are we getting? Sorry, Theo Schmidt. I can see that he wants to answer.
I will defer to CEO Schmidt, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, and through you to Councilor Moore. And hopefully I'll assist Director Culver here. So to maybe simplify it is the kinetic GPO is really so our procurement coordinator would go out and typically issue an RFP or a tender and go through the evaluation process, and then council would award to whoever the contractor is. Kinetic GPO has already done that. They've already done all of that work. So that's where the cost savings come into play. We don't have to spend months, like Director Culver mentioned, on creating an RFP and really trying to go through that evaluation process. It's already been done. So Kinetic GPO has done that, and they have a number of vendors who they have selected through their process. So the $150,000 would be spent on the project management firm, whoever we end up awarding to. So Kinetic GPO we're not paying Kinetic GPO. We're paying whoever the project management firm is that we select through their process that they've already walked through that would help save time on our end. Hopefully that explains the rest.
Thank you.
Through
Yeah.
your worship, I apologize. That was a much better explanation.
I have Councillor Fisher, the Council Alexander, and Deputy Cabral.
Actually, I'm just digesting what our CAO said. I think it answered my question. Essentially, just to reiterate, so we're going out to them, and they will assist us in constructing an RFP. So that, am I hearing this right? I'm sorry.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, through you to Councillor Fisher. So they've already created and drafted the RFP and essentially have shortlisted a number of vendors, preferred vendors, if you will, that essentially by moving in this direction allows us to save that time and effort. And we just go and we select one of those vendors. So they've already done that work for us, which would typically could take 3, 4, 5 months. It allows us to expedite that process. You're still going to be, council will still be determining, do you agree with who that project management firm is? We don't know who that is at this stage, but if you give us the green light tonight, we will walk those steps and we'll be back to council to provide you with that information.
The access to their pre-quals. Thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Okay, so a number of my questions were answered, so thank you. I was a bit confused on who the PM was. So that does make sense. I do like the stage gating process. I think it's important to be able to do the no-go call at many stages, and hopefully you don't have to make that no-go decision, but it's not always something like COVID. Sometimes it might just be it's too expensive. Like there are reasons why you have to say no sometimes. So to have that gated approach that allows you to make those decisions along the way, I'm happy to see that. So, and it's a well thought out process to move forward, which I think is important. So thank you.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I know that I was kind of waiting for a more robust scenario with regards to the funding models that might be used and some additional intimate knowledge of what this township can actually afford moving forward. It's not that I'm opposed to $150,000, but the last consultant we had, be quite honest with you, I don't think we really got our money's worth out of that. But my concern is that we're still looking at the max. And the problem I have with that, and I'll give you a couple of examples, Scarlet Road, a bridge, there's a lot of things that could affect that where the debt capacity, let's say, is not going to be available to us if we put all of our marbles towards the hub. So I do still want to see some scenarios coming forward that can show me personally that 2.5 years down the road, when we're into this project, we're not putting a stop on it because all of a sudden we have to put money into, another major project or a major repair, or who knows what could happen. So I don't want to be really close to the red line. I want to have some buffer opportunity, and I get the stage gating says, oh, we can put on pause for a while. But that kind of defeats the purpose of moving forward with the project from the get-go. So that's why I still was looking for that kind of information to give me the comfort level, because as a taxpayer and someone sitting on council, I really have to feel comfortable that, 10 years down the road, my tax bill hasn't gone like through the roof because we engaged down a path that we really couldn't afford. So I'm still looking for that piece. I'm not opposed to the $150,000 if it's going to provide us something concrete to move forward on, but I still need to know where this money's coming from, especially if we're going to be taking on debt, because it sounds to me like we don't have the sufficient DCs to cover it, but we're hopefully going to be getting them. So go ahead, CO Schmidt. And I know we did discuss this a little bit, but I just want to let you know, I still am not at that comfort level to just say, hey, let's just go full force ahead.
I have CO Schmidt, and then I did see that Director Culver also had comment.
Yeah, I'll defer to CO Smith, but I do have a comment after as well. Yeah. The only thing I'll say, because I think you're probably going to explain the debt capacity, which is beyond me. That's his job and the treasurer's. But I think your concern is actually the point of the stage gating process, because as we sit right now, there have been a lot of theories thrown around about what we should do, and there's been even direction sort of suggested about what we should do, but we don't have enough information to be able to build exactly what you're asking for. So each step allows us to build that information. So by the time we get to the next gate, $150,000 later, let's say, you now have a much clearer picture of what that future potential looks like, whether it's debt or DCs or private funding, if we've been able to cover some of that ground, or upper tier funding, if we've been able to cover some of that ground. That's sort of those are the answers we're looking to seek through this process, so that at each gate you have something that makes you more and more and more comfortable. The goal is not to leave you where you are today at stage 5. By stage 5, you should have been very, very comfortable all the way through. Well, the body of council should have been very, very comfortable all the way through. And sorry.
CO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Deputy Cabral. So I think I understand your concerns, Deputy Mayor Cabral, and further Director Culver's comments. What I would suggest is that the township will be, or staff will be bringing forward an option for council's consideration during the 2025 budget to actually update our long-range financial plan, which includes not only this project, but all projects that are on the table for the next 10 years, I would suspect. And through that process, hopefully it'll give you more of a comfort level as to how does this project fit in with all the other projects that are geared or slated to move forward in the next 10 years for the municipality. So we are due for an update to our long-range financial plan. It was last completed in 2020. Typically every 5 years minimum, we would update that. So the intent is to come forward and seek some funding from council through the 2025 budget, which will hopefully give you a little bit better comfort level as to, again, the total financial picture for the municipality.
Thank you, CO Schmidt. Now, I just come back a little bit on that. There are those people that are, phenomenal risk takers. And there are other people who like to know what it's going to cost, how much it's going to cost, and how they're going to pay for it, and make sure that they have sufficient funds on hand to do that. And I guess I fit into that category, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of other taxpayers in Springwater Township that fit into that same boat. Want to have the hub, but I want to feel comfortable, and also for the taxpayers that they're going to get what they want. And although the staging sounds wonderful, what you end up really doing in some cases is you're committing yourself at different stages. And there's going to come a point where you're in it, whether you want to be or not. You're going to have to finish it up, or you're going to have something that's just a total waste of money and a total waste of time. And that would be my fear, I guess. So to CAO Schmidt's point, if that can happen and, so that we can let the residents know that, hey, listen, not only can we build this, but we can afford to build it. And that is my key concern. We do hear certain projects in other municipalities that go completely off the rails. And I just want to put my faith and trust in our staff and everybody who's involved that we're going to move forward with this in a really good way. Thank you.
Director Culver?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, your worship. We're on the same page in terms of your concern. That's obviously staff's concern as well, because as CEO Schmidt has alluded to, there's a lot going on in this community, especially over the next 10 to 20 years. You'll notice in the stage 2 that business case and capital plan and operating plans are all part of this. Granted, they'll be at a higher level, but it's starting to, when we say, can we afford this? It's the this we don't know yet, right? It's the this where we've sort of thrown out a couple of really nice ideas, but we haven't got a sense of how much, like if it's a pool, how much does the pool cost to operate? How much, how big is the pool going to be? What are the opportunities if it's a 50-meter pool or a 25-meter pool? How many lanes should it have? Should it have a therapy pool, a warm water pool for older adult activity or therapeutic uses? Those are all the questions that you guys get to have a determining factor where we say, here's what we found, here's what the operating costs look like, again, at a high level. And then you can say, you know what? Get rid of the therapy pool and get rid of knock it down by a couple of lanes because we feel comfortable based on the financial outlook getting into this mode. At this point, it's almost an impossibility to sort of be as comfortable as we'd all want to be, but the process leads us to that comfort. Hopefully that helps.
Follow on?
Yeah, just a quick one. I guess too, because this council has been part of a process that kind of tried to walk us down that path on what it was going to look like and what we were going to be envisioning, and some of the things that you spoke about in respect of the aquatics piece. So it kind of seems like we're starting over again. So I hear what you're saying, and that's why I don't have a problem with $150,000. I just want to make sure it's well-spent money that's going to put us on the right path. That's it for me. And that a design comes forward that we can do exactly what you say. Pick a few things out, because when they were showing us blobs, it didn't do anything for me. Thank you.
Totally
Yeah.
understood.
And just a comment before I do go to councillors Garwood, Thompson and Fisher. I think the long range financial plan is a key component to, well, it's a separate component, but it's key to this. I think when we were moving through the Midhurst secondary plan, that financial plan gave council a sense of understanding on the broader spectrum, because, as we move forward with this hub, we're going to have residents saying, well, what about the roof on my rink? What about the investment in the Elmville Arena? And having that long range financial plan will be able to assure residents that your areas are not forgotten. Yes, this is a focus and this is the most significant thing that we've ever done, but we're not forgetting about everything else that needs to be done. But also, as we take on debt capacity, I think that part of that plan needs to show residents how we are going to put back and take back down that capacity so that we're not passing this burden or this debt on to future councils and future generations. So I think that financial plan is going to really coincide with us as we move forward through these stage gating. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Culver. And again, thank you for the presentation and for answering the questions. I think to stem or connect to other members of council's comments, I did have concern with where we are today. The previous consultant's work that has been completed, again, I've had frustrations with that, and I think many of us have shared that same sentiment. So looking at page 5 of the report, it speaks to the community hub's 10-year capital plan and the $111,000 associated for the 2024 year. So is this $150,000 for stage 2 for the PM firm in addition to the 111 that's identified here? Maybe that's a CEO Schmidt question. So I'll start there, and if you can answer that for me.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Garwood. So I'm trying to recall where the $111,000 is, but my understanding is that the $150,000 is for the project management phase. So it would be in addition to that $111,000.
Okay. I have councillors Thompson, Fisher, and then Alexander.
Through the chair to Director Culver, great presentation. I I look forward to working with you on it for the next couple of years and beyond, maybe. Just a couple of questions. You mentioned a couple of sources of funding we haven't talked much about in these council chambers, and could you just elaborate on private funding and upper tier funding for me?
Director Culver?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So the elaboration is that they need to be investigated. Obviously, upper tier funding is often a part of community hub development. It's, I will say that, and I'm trying to pick the right words, it's somewhat opportunistic. Those funds don't always exist. There isn't sort of a waiting pool of funding a lot of times, but there have been mention of recreation facility support from the federal and provincial levels. Recently even, all those programs haven't yet fully emerged. What I can say is that in every case that I'm familiar with, the more shovel ready, the more prepared you are to actually expedite use of those funds, the more likely you are to receive those funds. And so what the stage gating process actually does is it provides a framework that can be used as part of those applications. We can say we're actually on a path here versus, again, in my own experience, being in a place where you say, we'd really like the money. Well, what are you going to build? We don't know. We just need money for a rink or whatever. And it becomes it's a non-starter a lot of times. They're competitive. So the more prepared we are for those opportunities, the better. I'll also say that there are, and this is also in my experience, with the acquisition of an appropriate firm to provide the project leadership. And I know we're using the term project management, but it's a bit of a higher order. There is project management as a part of it, but it really is about helping have oversight of the parts and pieces like fundraising, where they have access to subcontractors who are professionals at philanthropy and financial planning around donations, around upper tier. They know where those avenues are. They have creative means to even help us discover things we wouldn't know existed in terms of ways to fund. Again, it's without making any kind of promises, but I've had experience with this kind of a firm before. And it helps a lot when you get to that, the piece that we're talking about, how are we going to pay for this?
I have Councilors Fisher, Alexander, and then Moore.
Yeah, just wanted to say, I think financial clarity from the onset with the public is very important. As this project is dragged on, I don't know how other councillors and the mayor and deputy mayor, if they've been speaking to people, but I've noticed enthusiasm is maybe turning into almost frustration or questioning of the project. How much will it cost? Why is it really not taking off? What were those blobs I saw on the screen, right? So I certainly believe in the project, but I definitely I can speak for myself, but also the constituents I represent. They really do want to see like a price tag on this and how we're moving ahead with it. And I can tell you from my ward, major projects, we talked about them and talked about our debt capacity. People are starting to question, what's going on with Craig Road. That's vital, right? The hub is great and we love it, but it's a bit of a luxury, whereas Craig Road is vital. So these are questions that I'm getting, from people in Ward 5 and surrounding area, right? So I think a big piece for people is that financial clarity, knowing exactly what, we can't have it down to the penny, but what is this going to cost us? What are we really embarking on? And is this or is this not affecting other projects that are maybe vital to the community? So I think those are questions that need to be answered along with, a dollar figure as well. So.
Council Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Collins. So I just actually had a question about the 150,000. So obviously that's for the project management firm. Is that anticipated to be for stage 2? And then after we get through stage 2, they're going to come back and we're going to get another quote. Okay, so we're thinking.
Yeah.
Yes, so you're going to just elaborate a bit on that. Thank you.
Director Culver, thank you.
Yeah. So through you, Your Worship, so yes, we're looking at stage 2, and I will say that the 150,000 is an estimate. We have not spoken obviously with the firm. We don't know exactly what the price tag is. I'm using it as kind of a background number. We may, when we return and discuss about the award, we will obviously have the correct number. But yes, that's for stage two, includes all those things that I had listed in stage two. Obviously, and plus whatever their expertise drives as additional to that, that helps us get more clarity to the point of almost every counselor by the time we finish stage two. And then yes, prior to embarking upon stage three, which is a significant, that's the next significant debt. And this goes a bit to the deputy mayor's comment. When you get to detailed design, you're talking about a percentage of the overall build cost, which when we know sort of in the neighborhood of what we're talking about, there's no percentage that isn't a lot of money. So that gets to be a very, very significant decision point. But yes, that would be a separate consideration by council in terms of that expense for stage two. It's not the 150 doesn't cover all 5 stages, but also we're not committed beyond the stage we're on. So that again, we can be efficient and make good decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Director Culver. Just a question about the professional, the management firm, the project management firm. Is there a space or a stage in which you see an owner's representative being a part and parcel of the team? And I know CAO Schmidt and I have talked about this before, where you have large projects and you hire an owner's representative where they only look out for, say, the township's best interests and protect the township's best interests. And of course, the professional, the project management firm is going to just focus on the project and do a good job with the project, but not necessarily look out for the township's best interests. So is that something you see at a certain stage being hired, or do you think this firm can offer that as well?
Yeah.
Director Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. Not to be contradictory, but that's exactly why I'd be hiring this firm. The firm is our representative. They have the expertise in order to ask the appropriate questions, to give the appropriate direction, to not accept what isn't reasonable from their subs in terms of helping us get to where we need to go. They work for us and they are us in this project as far as my experience has been. They are not a third party. They are us for the duration of the project. So we will have multiple connection points into the staff part of the organization, and there will be multiple opportunities where we're presenting to council for the decisions that move the project forward or not. But I don't see the need for an additional party. I feel like the way this system has worked in my experience, that's exactly what the firm is. They are the township's representative.
Follow on?
Thank you. So and that could be perfectly fair. I just know that it was presented to us that the project management firm is often just preoccupied with building the project, and they're very, very busy with all of the trades and all of the ins and outs of the daily, that they don't have time always to be looking out strictly for the township and where the township lies, making sure the township's budget is in check, things like that. So, but we will see the RFP anyway when it comes forward and what the scope for them would look like. So, I'll be able to see that that's all incorporated. So.
Yeah, and through your worship, I think what you're talking about is contract administration, and that is actually a part of their work as well. So they will have our budget as dictated by council, as council gives the boundaries, and that's their objective. They don't work outside of that. Because there's like when we get to the part where we're actually constructing, that's a different skill set. It's not the same as the stage 2 skill set. That's why we have a firm, because they will employ different skill sets in order to manage the trades, manage all that, but within the oversight of a budget prescribed by council. So I don't have the same concern you have, but I'm happy to work with you on helping you get that comfort.
Deputy Correll?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Director Culver. I guess I just want a bit of clarity here, because I understand the procurement piece going to this kinetic outfit that already has these pre-approved firms and whatnot. But when you're talking about the project management and a firm, are you talking about a single source, or are you talking about an RFP for the project management piece that would go out to anybody who wanted to provide that service to us? that's kind of where I'm sitting here, and I can kind of listening to what Councillor Moore is saying. I'm starting to question whether or not we're talking about a single source for the project management piece, or is that the RFP to bring a project management firm on board? Are we talking about a particular firm right now?
Director Culver?
So we're talking about, so Kinetic replaces the RFP. So we would not be going to open market. We would be going to Kinetic, who's already done those processes. So they have asked for competitive bids. They've vetted the skill set. They've gotten down to like the hourly rate that the firm provides is already known. And so no, it's not an open market situation, but it is still a properly vetted purchasing arrangement and not a sole source. There's three terms there that I want to make sure we're clear on. Sole source is we've just picked a client or a vendor. This is not the case. We're going to a GPO, a group purchasing organization, who's already pre-vetted. So they've done the competitive process. Anybody had the opportunity to become a part of the Kinetic GPO. And that's where that competitive process lives. We're going to the agency that provides for that.
Follow on, Deputy Cabral?
Just so that I'm crystal clear, what you're really saying to me is that this Kinetic GPO is going to provide all the services that we want, including the project management piece. Is that what I'm hearing?
Kinetic GPO will provide the vendor who has all of that within their realm.
I have that piece.
Yeah.
Are they going to oversee as project management as well? Is that part of their role?
That's the intent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
there are firms out there that have that scope.
Right. So
which
it's
is
one
why
and the
we're going-
same, really,
Yeah.
is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not an outside agency that we're going to bring in to work with Kinetic GPO. It's Kinetic GPO has all that in place.
So the roster, the Kinetic GPO has a roster. They'll be providing us with an identified vendor, which isn't Kinetic. Kinetic doesn't do the project management work. Okay, just making sure we're all on the same
It's
page.
kind of like, you know, the guys who provide household services and they have a selected list of approved vendors that they will.
It's a lot like that. Yeah.
Same. Okay, I get you.
Yeah. Not seeing any more hands at this time, council, if there's anything further regarding this. Not seeing any, so I do have this moved and seconded. So council, again, that the report from the Director of Recreation, Parks and Facilities regarding the stage gating approach for the Community Hub project dated July 3rd, 2024 be received, and that council directs staff to utilize the stage gated approach to develop and construct Springwater Community Hub, and that council authorize staff to engage the project management services through Kinetic GPO Cooperative Purchasing Program, and that council directs staff to report back to council at each of the appropriate decision points in the stage gate approach. Not seeing anything further, council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you. Council, we are now moving on to our action reports. May I have a mover and seconder for the reports, please? I have Councillor Moore and Councillor Alexander, and that we have action reports items 10.2 through 10.16. And the recommendation, that these be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. I have 10.2, the Professional Health Services Complex, 10.3, budget preparation for 2025, 10.4, a funding agreement and the reward of the Canada Community Building Fund, 10.5, the amendment of the development charges bylaw, 10.6, the noise bylaw exemption request, 10.7, the draft short-term rental licensing bylaw, 10.8, award of RFQ 2024-37 PW, the installation of the effluent bed inspection ports. 10.9, award of tender 2024-47 iOS, the pulverization and double service treatment of Scarlet Line. 1010 is the SU 2020-001 of 1256 Wilson Drive. 1011 is ZB 2024 Block 60 Plan 51M of, -430. 1012 is OP 2024-002 and ZB 2024-003. And this is the pit expansion of 1693297 Ontario Inc. I have 1013 of RR 2024-001, ZB 2024-010, and this is the draft plan extension for Midhurst Heights subdivision. 1014, the award of RFP 2024-25 RFP, and it's the facility access control. And 1015, it's the pre-budget approval for the senior planner, which is full-time. And 1016, the Orr Lake septic reinspection program. Council, I do have 10.2 pulled and 1015 pulled. Are there any other items we wish to pull to be dealt with separately this evening? Otherwise, we can have comments on the rest of them. Councillor Fisher? And that has been, so 10.2 and 1015 have been recently pulled. Anything on top of those two? I'm not going to read all the names again. I will just read it out as, so council, at this time, we are approving items 10.2 through 10.16 with the exception of 10.2 and 10.15 to be dealt with separately. Deputy Cabral?
Just a question.
And a question on 10.14 before we do. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just had a quick look at the report there again. I'm just curious to know, I think we're due for it, but what type of facility access control are we actually looking at? Pin pads, cards? Thank you. I just want to know what we're going to be getting for the money that we're going to be spending. And whether it's networked or whether, you know, physically have to be there, can it be accessed? Is it going to provide us that kind of flexibility? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Manager Dean.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Deputy Mayor and the rest of council. So what we are looking to do is install a remote keyless entry to basically the rest of the facilities within the township. So staff will have a card similar to this, same with other approved users of the facilities. There's also other ways that user groups can enter the facility. So when we're renting a facility to kind of one-off rentals, our fitness program contracts, etc., we can also assign a key code. So they would type in a 4 or 6-digit number, and it would make the building available from say 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. for them. Outside of those hours, essentially, they wouldn't have entry unless they were authorized entry through staff. So staff will be able to update these kind of in office at their computer as well as remotely. So if something went on, if an alarm was triggered, an alert was triggered, we would also be able to access it remotely via cell phone and the application.
Thank you.
Councillor Fisher.
I just wanted to say, I think this is great. I know for some facilities, I know for the Midhurst CRA, you know, we're always looking for keys. I think it must be a nightmare for staff to be keeping track of who has keys. I also think there's an element of liability as well, right? When there's keys out there. So I think this is just a really logical step, and I think it'll make a lot of people really happy as well. And also give staff control over the facilities, you know, command and control over it. So this is, I think this is really excellent.
And while I have you here, will this help provide greater access to some of our facilities, whether it be washrooms or amenities that residents are currently looking to have, but we have to continue to have staff to go out to lock them and staff to go out to open them. So with an expansion of this, if we were to continue to move this to more and more of our facilities, would this make our existing facilities more readily available to our residents?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself and to the rest of council. So yes, we could expand this to some of our outdoor concession facilities. So actually at a few of our busy concessions, we already have a solution in place. It's not necessarily a keyed access, but it's a timed lock access that does allow us to open and close it without staff necessarily open and closing it, which is great. And we can expand that to some other facilities. In terms of having these community halls open for washrooms, so typically those would be available through rentals and or through our community recreation associations, but it definitely would help with control, with monitoring who's in and out of the building, and just different security and liability functions. So yes, it can be expanded, definitely.
Thank you for that. I do remember it was maybe our first term, and it was there was perpetual vandalism, and it was the remote lock that really helped us control that. So I think this is another great step. So thank you for that. Councillor, are there any other questions for Manager Dean while she's in the hot seat here pertaining to this item only? All right. Thank you very much for answering that question. Council, before we do go to move to accepting all but 10.2 and 10.15, are there any questions pertaining to any other items on the agenda? And not seeing any, all those in favor? And that is approved. We will now move to item 10.2. And I do have a mover, which is Councillor Moore, and a seconder for pertaining to the health services complex. And I have Councillor Alexander, that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding professional health services complex, the hub dated July 3rd, 2024 be received, and that council confirm their intent in pursuing a partnership for professional health services complex, a hub, and that council confirm that the preferred location for the professional health services complex be 1432 Snow Valley Road West, western portion of the utility lands, and that council authorize staff and legal counsel to move forward with an in principle to prepare a lease agreement for professional health services complex, and that staff be directed to continue discussions with Dr. Gabor and his team and report back to council. And at this time, I will turn to Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I wanted to just publicly say thank you to Dr. Gabor and CAO Schmidt and Director Heron for your efforts and support in bringing this very exciting report with recommendations so quickly to council for consideration. It's no secret that I'm a strong supporter and advocate for this project, and I'll continue to work with the community stakeholders and residents in ensuring we do all we can in making this medical hub a reality. This project offers security and stability as it relates to healthcare in our communities, and I believe a broad consensus for this development and vision exists, as it will greatly benefit all walks of life as well as the economy as a whole. This project will improve timely access to healthcare and assists in addressing the significant structural challenges in the healthcare system. It has the potential to offer opportunities within the provincial directives in addressing and expanding access to things like mental health care, primary care, and a variety of other specialties. So thank you again, Dr. Gabor, for your vision and for choosing Springwater Township as a trusted partner and collaborator in your venture. And with that, I would like to concur that the motion move forward as suggested by staff.
Thank you. Councillor, any other comments or questions on this exciting endeavor? And while this report came forward quickly, Dr. Gabor, I would like to thank you. I believe it's been about 7 years since we've continued to have these conversations, and your vision continues to excite all of us. And again, as Councillor Moore said, thank you for choosing Springwater. I think that this is going to be a great thing, and I do agree that putting it at this location does allow us opportunity to expand, whether it's recreation or just even having control over the hub for future expansion. So we need, so very excited for this next step. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and just adding in my sentiments to echo Councillor Moore, timely access, I think you put it, and that's exactly what should be the focus up here today. We've been speaking a lot around this table about primary care. Our attempt to attract physicians to our community, no matter where it is in Springwater. So thank you, Dr. Gabor, for making an investment in multiple ends of our community and for being here this evening.
Not seeing anything further at this time. Council, all those in favor? And those were some excited unanimous hands to go up. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And at this time, we will move on to 10.15, and brace with me for a second while I find the. And at this time, I have item 10.15, moved by Councillor Fisher, and a seconder, please. Councillor Moore, that the report from the Director of Planning and Development titled Pre-Budget Approval for a Senior Planner Full-Time dated July 3rd, 2024 be received, and that Council provide 2025 pre-budget approval to authorize the hire of a permanent full-time senior planner position, and that staff be directed to recruit the permanent full-time senior planner position immediately. And at this time, I will turn to Councillor Fisher and then members of council.
Thank you. Through you to Director Heron, I'm just wondering if you can speak to why you feel that we need to hire this position right now, the need for it, and also why we need to do this pre-budget. You know, I'm of the mindset quite often that we shouldn't be doing any of these things outside of budget. So I was wondering if you could speak to that for us.
Director Heron.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. I did give that question serious consideration. I've been here for 5 months, less 2 days, and I've spent that time being observant and learning the processes of the planning department, the processes of the township. And what I've seen is that this municipality will be experiencing a significant amount of growth in the future. And we heard Director Culver mention that in his presentation as well. So I thought, okay, well, in my job description, it says that I'm responsible for strategic initiatives in terms of making the planning department function and coming up with policies and giving advice to council and guidance there. So I thought, well, I need to understand the capacity of our department to do that. So in the report, you'll see that I've drafted a lot of these reports over my career, and this one has more justification than I've ever come across for an immediacy of filling a position. And I am typically highly respectful of the budget process because there are more than one single need when council looks at budget. But I realized that in assessing the capabilities of the planning department, there is an entire key function that we're not fulfilling to council and to the public. We're actually not planning. We're not coming up with policies to guide us into the future. And we will be under a lot of growth pressure. So I made the decision and I brought it to the CAO and we discussed it at the directors' meetings that there is an immediacy to this. Part of the rationale behind that immediacy is that the market is telling us that the township of Springwater, and in particularly the settlement areas in Springwater, it's a place to develop. It's a place to invest, and there will be return on investment. What I've seen in my observations is that we've been reliant on the Midhurst secondary plan, and that was driven by lawyers and developers. And the product is basically single detached units. It is a bedroom community that we have been going along with. This is an opportunity for the township to take control of its own future and to create complete community. So to do that, the department actually needs those hours. We need somebody with experience to pull together the studies and the direction, to give council the opportunity to look at what does complete community look like. And the term is bounced around quite often. So we have Centre Vespra. Centre Vespra is almost wholly single detached units. We're seeing an MZO, almost wholly single detached units with a stormwater management pond and a park. There are no employment lands in that project. There are no commercial lands in that project. There's no medical lands in that project. Those are elements of complete community. So we don't have currently the official plan policies to bolster the transportation plan we're currently working on, the master parks plan we're currently working on. So when I say there's a big hole and there's an immediate need to fill it, it's about planning for our future so that council can take advantage of Bill 185, where the province is downloading the ability to make decisions on your own future. And the planners, that position is needed so that we can come forward to council with those future directions and grasp and create complete community.
Following Councillor Fisher?
Thank you. Through you, two questions. One, it sounds like this position would maybe bolster economic development. So that's a question. And if you were to start the recruitment process now, when would you see filling this position?
Director Heron?
Thank you, Your Worship. The economic development is actually critical. when we're looking at complete community, I'm going to take a sidebar to get to the question again. So if you look at the Planning Act, under Section 2 of the Act, it says council shall comply and work towards these various goals that the province has directed. And there's 20 of them. Economic development is one of them. Employment lands is another one. Institutional housing, targeted housing. So specific to your question of economic development, while we have currently some employment lands identified, we don't have a policy direction on what value do they have to where we want to grow. The location of them, do they match where the growth is happening? What is important about the employment lands is we're also required to create multiple forms of housing. Typically, you won't get apartments, you won't get back-to-back townhouses, you won't get those cheaper units because right now the market that we're selling to are the single detached homes, and that's a very specific market. You need jobs, and those jobs, economic development would drive what are the best fit that are high-paying jobs that come with people who will move to this area, but they would be from a socioeconomic background that are a little varied from what we've seen in our market to date that purchase single detached houses. So you may get singles, you may get different levels of professionals who would be housed in those other types of units. So there's a synchronicity of create the employment, you'll create the market for different types of housing, you'll create a different spending power that will drive the economy, that will drive different services in town, it will drive different commercial uses in town. It all blends together. So there's a wisdom from the province in terms of what they're asking municipalities to do. And I'll close on this one because I'm getting winded, I'm sorry. What's really good about Bill 185 is the province, all those same rules are applying in terms of what they want to see to drive the provincial economy and drive housing, but they're giving it back to municipalities to make decisions that are local flavored, that work locally. So that's kind of why I'm bringing this report forward now. We see that with the new fees structure, it will be a self-funding job. We won't have to go to the taxpayers for it. It will be paid through fees. But there is a need for us to tackle this policy role as soon as we can. The answer to the second question is if we post this next week, it typically takes anywhere from a month and a half to 2 months to get through the advertisement, the interview process and job offers and negotiation back and forth. So ideally, my goal would be have that position filled by January 1st. It'll likely be sooner, but I'll promise high, deliver low, or promise low, deliver high. Hopefully have somebody sooner than January 1st. And what the report doesn't do for council is gives you a really good synopsis and analysis of why there's a need. But what it doesn't do, there wasn't room for it. What is the value for dollar? So immediately that person would finish the current official plan that we have because we haven't finished it yet and we haven't had time to do it. We need a zoning bylaw to match the new official plan. We need to come up with a housing strategy because the province, not only do they want a strategy, they want housing targets. They want rental housing targets. We'd have to start a new official plan and to take advantage of Bill 185, which allows us to streamline when and where development would occur. And that would tag along beautifully with the master plan on water and wastewater servicing that we're currently working on. So there's a whole dovetailing of where we're at today that with this position, I can make it work right away and start getting returns to council almost immediately. But policy takes a little longer than implementation, but it's right there in front of us. So that's my rationale for bringing it forward now instead of waiting for 3 months. I tell my staff that this is an incredible place to work. You are going to get the experience of a lifetime when it comes to being a planner. So we'd just like to add one more person in there to enjoy that.
Thank you. And I will go to Councillor Fisher for one last and then to Councillor Alexander.
Sorry, guys, I keep asking questions. Just through you to Director Heron. You mentioned the fee structure and how that would essentially compensate for the position. I wonder if you could explain that to council and the public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And through your worship to council. I worked with multiple departments and the treasurer on this one, and the treasurer helped me out to understand this. With the new fee structure, it will increase the planning department fees. The expected revenue is $150,000 per year based on application fees. The fees, the number of applications are going up, steadily rising. The position itself, the cost for the position for wages and benefits is about 150,000. So in that way, council having recently adopted the new fee structure, it also paves the way for the payment or costing for this new position that's being requested.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander?
There we go. Okay, thank you, Mayor Garland. So I appreciate your overall vision of the position. We've talked a lot about economic development, about planning at this table, and you've put a lot of thought into this and how it would, provide long-term benefit and the overall vision, which I do really appreciate. The piece I'm struggling with is the outside of budget piece. And not more so in that when budget's brought before us, we are given whatever it is, say 5 to 15 different program changes to look at. And when I look at those, I weigh them and, think, okay, well, what can we do? What can't we do? And so when we approve something like this outside of budget, we're kind of getting a leg up on everything else, and not saying it's not worth it, but it's a different way to look at it. So I know I'm a little bit of a crystal ball, but I'm sure you're thinking about what you're going to ask for at budget. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm just wondering, kind of what your thought is, if we approve this position, where does that leave your department come budget time?
Director Heron?
Thank you. To be frank and honest, in the years to come, the department will need more staff. I'm wise enough to know that you don't come asking twice until you've proven you've proven that position. So it's results oriented. Call me old fashioned, but there's a respect there for the tax dollar, because I understand whose pockets it's come out of. I pay taxes too. There is another explanation to it though. And it's all got to do with synchronicity of growth. In creating the planning policy, so they're doing that as soon as we can, it gives great guidance to the investment industry. And the developers like that. If they know how the community is going to be developed, it gives them a better sense of what kind of products they can put in the properties they invest in. The sooner we can get those properties planned and built upon, the sooner we can get more returns for development charges, for annual taxation, for property improvements, and the sooner that feeds back into the system to feed the other needs of the town. So there's a bit of planning comes first, and then you benefit from that. And over time, you start to build on your reserves, and you start to build on because you're bringing on property improvements sooner rather than later. I think we may still get those property improvements. So there's a bit of a weakness in what I'm saying. They're going to come anyway. But if they're planned, it's better for the community because we're actually creating a planned community. So there's a rationale for planning it ahead rather than letting the market decide for us how it's going to look.
CEO Schmidt and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Cogman. So I guess what I would say and add to the conversation is council really has a choice here tonight. You can continue to march to the same beat of the drum that we've been marching to for many years here and be reactionary to what's happening in the community and development community, continue to drive where development happens in Springwater. Or you can actually take a leap of faith and draw a line in the sand and actually start to take hold of where you want to see development happen in the municipality. And this position will help you start to move in that direction. So you either can agree with the recommendation tonight of staff, which I would say to Director Herron's comment, I would hope we'd have somebody in here probably in September, October of this year, as opposed to January. That's my optimism and what I would be aiming for. And so it would be well in advance of the actual budget. And so if you wait till budget, you're waiting until essentially probably March, April of next year, if not longer, to bring somebody on. So again, that's what I pose to you tonight is you can either continue to march the way we've been marching, or you can actually draw a line in the sand and now start to dictate and take hold of where we want to go in the future. And this position will help us with that from a planning perspective.
Yeah. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I just gotta shed a bit of humor on this. I think maybe it was an error for me to not say that the fees and charges should all come online at the same time, because what it's really done is opened up a door. I can hardly wait for round two when the second part of the fees and charges comes forward. But after listening to Director Herron and reading the report, I am in agreement. But I'm still think it's kind of comical that it's the fees and charges that we're going to rely on to offset the cost rather than taxpayer dollars, which they are anyway. But I'm of a mind to support it. Although I would like to see fewer asks outside of budget time. I mean, 90 days is 90 days, so in the grand scheme of things, maybe for us, 90 days means a lot because we only sit here for a certain period of time, but for regular staff members, I don't think 90 days is a huge thing, but I'm prepared to support it.
Thank you for that. And I would agree that it would be an ideal world if everything only happened during budget and never happened outside of budget and no roads failed and no culverts bursts and no problems were identified. But tonight, I thank you for bringing forward a solution. And I think that's the difference with this. I see this as very, very, very forward thinking. I think that bringing on a new senior management team has provided us with an opportunity to have that new lens, and we continue to see it through recreation and again through the planning department. So I fully support this. I think that everybody knows everything during budget would be great, but we are in a customer service world that is ever changing and we need to adapt and react. And this one actually puts us in more of a proactive seat. So thank you for that. I think that residents from all across and not just the developers, but planning, not as much as finance. And I saw Mr. Director Bedard there, but every department within the municipality is intertwined. And when one department is over capacity, it slows down all progress. So I think that right sizing all of our departments is steps that we're going to be taking. And I do thank you for bringing this forward. I know that it's often nerve wracking outside of budget, even during budget, but more so outside of budget. So thank you for the presentation. And I don't know who that is. Fisher, Councillor Fisher, thank you.
Just along the lines of the same sentiments, I pulled this because actually thought I wouldn't vote for it or support it, but I think you really justified it very well. I don't, my one struggle was that it was outside of budget and I don't like it to be precedent setting, but I fully agree that to have that person in the position benefiting us. I also like the fact that it focuses on economic development, and I actually think that developing those areas can be good for us, and I think there's some real vision behind it. So you're a hell of a salesman, and I'm in support of it. You're converted.
And before I turn to anybody else, maybe we'll just go to the vote on that note. But Councillor, if there's anything further on this, I do have it moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Moore. Yeah. Seeing anything else? All those in favor? And that has carried. And at this time, I will take a break now for 10 minutes. So if we could be back at 8:20, please. Okay. Did you?
Think about Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, members of council, staff and public. We will reconvene and we are reconvening at our information reports, item 11. We have a mover and seconder for the information reports, please. I have councillors Thompson and Fisher. That report items listed herein be received for information. 1 SU 2024-002, OP 2024-004, and ZB 2024-013, 139 Queen Street West. And number 2, ditching and municipal drain operations. Are there any questions on either of these? Councillor Alexander?
I just have a comment, not a question, on the ditching and municipal drain operation report. I just wanted to thank Director Taylor and Manager Ha for the timely report, as well as kind of the layout of the plan of the operations for this year and proposed operations for next year. It's important information and it's nice for our residents to be able to see it. And then, if they have questions, they can reach out. I know ditching isn't fun like community hubs or medical centers, but it is a big piece of what we do. So it's important. So I do appreciate the timeliness of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. And just further to that, again, thank you for the report. I as well agree. This is a great resource, not only for council, but for the public. I'm not sure if it is something that would usually sit on a public website, but this might be a good resource to be able to have accessible to our residents. So if that is a possibility, we as members of council can also direct the public towards that singular space. So if that's a takeaway that we could possibly do, I think the community would appreciate it. And thank you again for the report.
Not seeing anything further. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. And at this time, I will call on Director Heron for our development update.
With apologies, Mayor Coughlin, I don't have an update for this evening.
That is. Deputy Cabral is shaking his finger at you, but I will turn to Deputy Cabral for his county update.
Just so that we're on the same page, I don't have a county update, but also I don't have additional staff to help you with it.
Perfect. And right now I would like, before I do move to the members of council for our municipal updates, I do believe that Director Culver has a verbal update on our Hunter Russell Trail.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a happy story. I mentioned we've sent information to council about the closure of the Hunter Russell Trail between Belmont and the river. We've met with the engineers and are continuing to work with the engineers. The outlook is not good for that bridge, but we're waiting for the engineers to provide a fulsome report so that we can provide proper information to council. That conversation is going to be at budget time, and it's going to be a significant conversation, but the information will come in due course. Unfortunately, and I know disappointing some members of the public who would love to get on the trails given the nice weather, that access is probably not going to be open for the end of this year. So it's just a heads up on that.
Thank you for that. So at this time, I will turn to members of council for municipal updates. Councillor Fisher?
Thank you. I'd actually like to take this time to propose a reconsideration. In the last council meeting, council received a report from our integrity commissioner. I would like to have council reconsider receiving that report. I don't think it was worthy of our council. Yeah, I'd like to propose a reconsideration of that.
I will turn to Clerk Ainsworth, but before there is discussion, we would need a seconder for this. Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So yes, there would be no debate or discussion at this point. As Councillor Fisher has tabled a reconsideration, Mayor Coughlin, if you could seek a seconder for the reconsideration. And to clarify, should council support the reconsideration back on the table, what would then be brought forward is the motion from June 19th that states that the report from the Integrity Commissioner presented on June 19th, 24 regarding 3 code of conduct complaints be received. Should that be retabled and supported through a reconsideration, council can then amend, vote in favor, vote against, or rediscuss the item.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth, and I would be looking for a seconder at this point, please. Counselor Alexander. And Clerk Ainsworth, can I ask you to reread the motion before I do turn to Counselor Fisher?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. This motion would be that resolution C 370 2024, June 19th, 24, regular meeting regarding an integrity commissioner report be hereby reconsidered. And just as a reminder, there is no discussion or debate on this motion.
On the reconsideration. So council, at this time, we are simply voting on the reconsideration prior to having any debate. So we do have it moved by Counselor Fisher, seconded by Counselor Alexander. And I did hear Counselor Thompson ask for a recorded vote. And I will turn to Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So as a reminder, the motion would read that resolution C 370 from June 19th, 2024, the June 19th regular meeting regarding an integrity commissioner report be hereby reconsidered. A vote in the positive, so a vote for yes, means that you would like to have it retabled and reconsidered. A vote in the no means you are looking to not have this brought back to the table. Once I state your name, please state yes or no. Counselor Garwood.
No.
Counselor Alexander.
Yes.
Counselor Thompson.
No.
Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Counselor Fisher.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral.
Yep.
And Mayor Coughlin.
Oh.
No.
That motion is carried.
And at this time, I will turn to Counselor Fisher. Oh, and I do apologize. The main motion as it's now being reconsidered, I would need a mover and seconder again for that. So I will have Counselor Fisher and Counselor Alexander again, please. And back to Counselor Fisher.
Sorry, I thought we just vote on it in the case for reconsideration.
So we just did vote on the reconsideration, which
Oh.
was carried, and now we are voting on the main motion again, as to whether or not we're going to receive it or not.
Okay. I'd like to vote on not receiving it.
Counselor Alexander?
I'll just have a quick comment here. I don't want to speak per se to the findings of the report. The findings are the findings. My issue with the report was the lack of information it provided. It was, what was it, a 3.5 page, not, referencing code of conduct. It was not at all what I was expecting from listening to members of council that have sat here before. It was not in line with previous integrity commissioners' reports in terms of the research done, the information provided. That is my issue with the report. I feel like we were charged a lot of money for something, quite frankly, my daughter in university probably could have produced without a lot of backup. And I didn't vote to receive it at that time. So, which is why I don't have a problem with the reconsideration or voting not to receive it now.
Counselor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Not accepting the report or not receiving the report does not mean it didn't happen. Does not mean what is in the report is not factual or not, dependent upon whose opinion it is. Regardless or not, we still spent the money. Not accepting the report doesn't mean it didn't happen. So it is out there, it happened, and whether or not we are thrilled with the findings of the report, this is unfortunately, in my opinion, a waste of time.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I do just want to clarify wording. The motion that is now on the table is for the report to be received. Council, there's no requirement in the Municipal Act that a integrity commissioner's report be received, approved. The only requirement is that it be made publicly available. So whatever the outcome of this motion is, the report would still be publicly available. It's still listed on the last meeting's agenda, and nothing would be able to change that. But I did want to just clarify the wording on the motion is to receive and not to approve the report.
Thank you. I have Counselors Fisher and Thompson.
I realize that it still would be very much public. However, I think, this municipality spent a large amount of money on something that even Mr. Swayze said, there was no reason to pursue it. I don't think we should even be spending this amount of money with Mr. Swayze. But you can call it symbolic if you want, but I don't think we as a council should be accepting it. So.
Counselor Thompson?
Through the chair, Mr. Swayze did have reason to do the report, and he gave the reason pretty accurately in his report, and the information he gave was factual. And I don't understand the purpose of not receiving the report, of reconsidering it after we did do it. I understand there's members of council here that are looking to support Councillor Fisher. I will not be. I won't be. I have no interest in reconsidering the report.
Thank you. I might, and I do apologize, Clerk Ainsworth, if I put you on the spot here. I'm finding myself, I guess it's deja vu. This council continues, this council and councils prior, since the inception of integrity commissioners, when sitting at this table, when this council, and when I say this council, I do apologize if there's members that weren't there before. We receive a report from an integrity commissioner, and if we don't like what those findings are, we simply don't receive it or then fire them. I'm hearing tonight that this report is not to the same standard of the previous integrity commissioner. However, the previous integrity commissioner came forward with findings that council of the day didn't like. We told them it was no good and we fired them. And now yet we're using that report as a standard to compare this one to. My concern with receiving, not receiving, reconsidering, the report has come forward, complaints were made, and to me, I don't know the difference in this, receiving it, not receiving, it's now a public document. We've all had ample opportunity. We debated this for a very long time at our last meeting. All of our comments were heard. I went to each of us at least 3 times to ensure that our comments were heard. This to me, again, it was stated in that report, petty politics. This to me tonight appears to be petty politics. This appears to me that we are trying to drag up something and have it rehashed or not. The end result is the same. The findings are the same. I've said it before, the intent of an integrity commissioner, in my opinion, is to provide an avenue for our residents to hold us accountable, not to have infighting amongst members of council. I would love for there to be a report across Ontario to find out what the costs are to the Ontario taxpayers municipal wide as to what this petty infighting causes. I won't support this because I don't see to me, reconsidering something is to have an outcome different than the consideration in the first place. Reconsidering this, the outcome's the same. This is simply, to me, grandstanding and petty politics. So I will not be supporting this, just as I did not support the reconsideration. And I will look to other members of council for other comments, or we can move. I have I did have Councillor Garwood, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Councillor Fisher, you mentioned symbolic, but yes, that is the only purpose of this reconsideration. I am interested in moving on and focusing on relevant municipal business, as I believe the 7 of us are. I have heard the words infighting, broken, so many other words to describe this council. We spoke about it 2 weeks ago, about working together and moving forward, and how do we get over this and do better moving forward. And we're doing the opposite of that tonight. We are sitting here rehashing the same thing that we've spoken about since January, February. Tonight, we spoke about major projects like the community hub that we should be focusing on. That is the purpose of the 7 of us. Not here to focus on petty politics, as the mayor had noted it and was noted in the report, and Mr. Swayze noted it. So this is a waste of time. This is only symbolic. Our job is to be more than symbolic.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm going to admit it. I erred last time. I specifically told Mr. Swayze that he even stated in his report there was no contravention of the code of conduct, yet he provided us a report that cost, I think, in the neighborhood of $38,000, if I'm not mistaken. There was no finding of a contravention, no acknowledgement. It wasn't a thorough report, 2.5 pages. Basically, I think it was a disservice to council, not in what the content was, but the fact that the report was flawed and no investigation took place. So, whether this came up as a reconsideration, I'm going to vote the way I would have liked to have voted back then. I actually should not have voted to receive it because it was an inadequate report at the time, and it still is to this day. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that this council revisit the entire costing and see whether or not there's opportunity for us to recoup or at least look into the fees that were charged for that report.
Thank you. And before I do go to Councillor Fisher, so a notice of motion for that intent could be brought forward during that time. Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Make it brief. In his own findings, he said there was no breach, yet he typed up basically 3 pages and charged us for it. So we can call it symbolic if you want. I'll go ahead with that. But I still believe that we should have never received it in the first place, and that's why I can justify bringing forward a reconsideration. I don't consider it petty politics. As a matter of fact, I think the taxpayers should be keenly aware of what the integrity commissioner charged us to do what he did. So I think I am justified in this. So I'd like to call the vote.
Well, thank you. And council, as you recall, I did send out an email to members of council quite some, I think a few months, maybe a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember when it was, about calling the vote. Just saying that I had previously allowed for conversation to happen after calling the vote, and being mindful that should a member of council moving forward call the vote, I would adhere to our procedural bylaw. Councillor Fisher has asked for the vote to be called. So at this time, understanding that there is only one member of council that hasn't had an opportunity to speak. If that member would like the opportunity to speak, I will grant that to you, Councillor Moore, but should you not need that, I will call the vote. Thank you for that. At this time, council, all those in favor? And there was a recorded vote. Oh, sorry, a second recorded vote. Clerk Ainsworth, or sorry, clarification on process. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And can yourself or the clerk please again explain a vote in the negative and a vote in the affirmative, please?
I will turn to Clerk Ainsworth for that.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The motion currently on the table is that the report from the Integrity Commissioner presented on June 19th, 2024 regarding 3 code of conduct complaints be received. A vote in the affirmative means that you are accepting the motion to receive the report. A vote in the negative means you are voting against receiving the report.
Thank you. And Clerk Ainsworth, the recorded vote, please.
Thank you. A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Thompson. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood.
Yes.
Councillor Alexander.
No.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Fisher.
No.
Deputy Mayor Cabral.
No.
And Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That motion is defeated.
Thank you for that. And I will turn back to Councillor Fisher for municipal updates.
Nothing further to add.
Councillors Moore, then Thompson. Councillor Alexander. There's the big one.
I just wanted to say that Phelpston had their annual Canada Day fireworks. I still believe they're the only official fireworks in Springwater for Canada Day, sorry. Another great turnout. The community stepped up large. It was an amazing show. The CRA puts a little bit of money towards it, but pretty much everything does come from community members that come to participate. Tons of kids there. Thank you, Councillor Garwood. I did manage to see you there as well. It was a great night. So huge thank you to the many number of volunteers that make that event happen. And it was safe. Nothing went sideways. So we're always happy when that happens. And then just upcoming on the August long weekend, knowing that we're not back at this table, will be the annual horseshoe tournament. And that's usually the Sunday of the long weekend. A great fundraising event. It's our biggest fundraising event. So I encourage people to watch for social media, the upcoming details. And it's always a fun day of horseshoes in Phelpston, and it is very competitive. And just in case anybody is wondering, my name is on the trophy twice. Not surprisingly, I'm with the same partner both times, whose name is on there way more times than mine is. So it might not be me coming to the table, but I will never not take the chance to let people know that I am on there. So hope to see people out. Thank you.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Councillor Alexander, I think that's a competition. I think you're calling us out here. I'm ready. But I will start with saying congratulations to the Phelpston CRA on the fireworks show on the 1st. My family and I attend yearly. I think Elmvale unofficially attends yearly. I've heard it so many times. Why don't we have fireworks in Elmvale? And I say because we have them in Phelpston. We could probably see them from home.
Yeah.
So congratulations again. I wanted to speak on a couple things that have happened recently and will be happening in the Elmvale community. On June the 20th, we had bingo for Emma. The ECRA wanted to support the Reynolds family, and it was incredible. We had over 70 members of the community show up. We raised over $700 for Emma and her family. And it was one of those nights where you understand truly why you love your community. So it was pretty neat. I wanted to congratulate the Springwater Fire Department on the firefighters breakfast in Elmvale on the 23rd. Again, it was packed. I think there was a lineup and the hall was full. So congratulations, Chief, and to your entire team. On the 27th of June, so last Thursday, I had the opportunity of attending the Elmvale District High School graduation in place of Mayor Coughlin, and presenting the Township of Springwater Award along with the Elmvale BIA Award to two incredibly deserving graduates in the Elmvale community. During the commencement celebration, they were speaking about how this year's class was the highest grade point average graduating class that they've had, I believe, ever. It could have been in recent years, but it was just incredible to sit there for a few hours and hear about the incredible things that our youth are doing. And I think one of the parents, I overheard them say, the future is bright in Springwater. And that night was one of those incredible evenings. This coming Saturday, Music in the Park, hosted by the Elmvale BIA, starts once again for the season. So running from July the 6th through August 24th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. At the little parkette on the corner there of Yonge and Queen and Elmvale. So if you're around shopping, whatever it may be, you'll hear some nice music in the Elmvale community and stop by. And this coming Monday, the Elmvale Community Recreation Association is going to be hosting a community cleanup in Heritage Park. So we know the many community members that dedicate a lot of their time to keeping our streets and our parks beautiful, along with our incredible staff. So we're going to lend a hand as well. And if any folks want to participate, 6 p.m. at Heritage Park in Elmvale this coming Monday. Thanks.
And just before I do that, in conflicting graduations, but I just wanted to make members of council aware that this year at Our Lady of Lourdes and throughout our elementary schools for graded graduations, so as brought forward by Councillor Moore, this was the first year that our students were recipients of the Springwater Bursary Award. So it was really nice to hear that at the elementary level. So they were quite excited. Not a lot of elementary bursaries have a dollar amount attached to them. So they were quite excited, and there was a large clapping when there was a recipient of that. So just being, kudos to all that supported that. So Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. Just a question for Councillor Garwood. Do you happen to know who the artist will be at Music in the Park this coming week?
Councillor Garwood.
It's a great question, Deputy Mayor Cabral, and I'm gonna keep,
That I would go and.
I'm gonna keep talking until I get to the point, but why don't I circle back with you during this meeting and I will let you know momentarily.
Thank you. At this time, if there is no other updates for members of council, we can move on to our notices to which motion, or sorry, our motions to which notice have been given. And at this time, I have Councillor Fisher. It's item 13.1, and I will be seeking a seconder for that, please.
Sorry, I'm going to withdraw my motion at this time.
And just for clarity, Councillor Fisher, so this is withdrawn and it will not appear on it. Okay, this will be withdrawn. Thank you for that. And we will now move on to item 13.2, and this is a notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Moore and seeking a seconder for this, please. I have Councillor Garwood, and I will turn to Councillor Moore.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Once again, pickleball reigns large and looms large. So I've been asked by the residents who live around the Snow Valley Highlands Park to please have pickleball court lines painted, I believe in their basketball court. And so I'd like to use funds from my discretionary account to the tune of about $1,200 per manager dean. I think that's accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have seen the head nod there. I have this seconded by Councillor Garwood, and then that the council hereby approve the painting of pickleball court lines at the Snow Valley Highlands Park at the cost of $1,200 be funded from the Ward 4 discretionary funds. Councillors, any comments or questions on this? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And we are now moving on to item 13.3, a notice of motion by Councillor Garwood. And I would be looking for a seconder, and I will turn to Councillor Garwood. Councillor Alexander, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Whereas students of Enville District High School are fundraising for a second flagpole at the school to provide opportunities to commemorate important elements within Canadian society. And whereas the flagpole will cost approximately $5,000, $2,500 to purchase the flagpole, and $2,500 for installation. And whereas the students have raised $1,800 to date, be it therefore resolved that council hereby approve a donation to EDHS students in the amount of $2,000 to be funded as follows. $1,000 from the Ward 1 discretionary funds and $1,000 from the mayor's discretionary funds.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. This was a really interesting experience. I actually received a letter, which I'm looking at right now, in front of me from 4 students, 4 Enville District High School students. And it was addressed to myself, and it pretty much provides a summary of what is listed in the motion. I know the students across the board from various clubs, student council, etc., have been supporting the purchase of a secondary flagpole to be utilized. Again, we often say up here, we want to see folks bring something to the table, and these students have done just that, almost raising half so far as to what they require. The ask was for $2,000, and I thank the mayor for offering to contribute to that total. I have not utilized my discretionary funds to date so far this term, so this would be the first time that a member of the community or a group from the community has reached out. So I'm happy to support the students in their endeavor.
Councillor, are there any other questions or comments on this? Councillor Alexander?
I just have a comment, actually 2 comments. One, I think it's a great initiative. I'm so happy they brought it forward. I know this was started being talked about last year, potentially before that. So I love the fact that, you know, the students are engaged, they've reached out, and it's something we can support. I think it's important. It's very important. What frustrates me a bit, and this is not about your motion, is I feel sometimes the school board should be coming to the table with some of this stuff. I know last year the school board was approached and they weren't willing to come to the table. And I do have an issue with that because it's the same with busing. It's the same with a lot of things that I'm more than happy to help support because I think they're so important. But yeah, it is frustrating that they don't seem to come to the table with some of the stuff, but thank you for coming to the table, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you. This just popped into my head, so I apologize, CEO Schmidt, but purchasing power, understand that this is not municipal property, but that the county and townships across the county would be purchasing flagpoles quite often. I didn't know if there's an opportunity for us just to reach out to those involved to maybe suggest to them where we would find the cheapest flagpoles, just maybe it might help them in that avenue, maybe not purchasing it for them or going through our procurement bylaw, but just to maybe help them out with, hey, this is where we find the best deal to be. CO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. I think as you've described it, I think we would be able to provide some assistance in that regards, but not purchase on their behalf, obviously. So.
Thank you for that. All right, council, we have the motion moved, seconded, and read, and not seeing any further. All those in favor? And that has carried. Oh, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. While the floor is open, I thought I'd answer the deputy mayor's question because I would forget. So this weekend, July 6th, the BIA is proud to present Jay Shaw, a creator of rock and roll with a country heart, a songwriter's soul. So Deputy Mayor Cabral, I feel like that might be up your alley potentially, so maybe I'll see you there.
Thank you for that. Yes, Deputy Cabral.
Yeah, I just want to, and I'm not going to step back and talk about the flagpole, but I do want to point out that in the paper recently, and I believe it was in Aurelia, there were a group of students that were very disappointed that the Canadian flag was taken down for another flag to fly. And it wasn't the fact that the flag was flying, it was the fact that they were upset that the Canadian flag was taken down. So I just want to say that this here is a solution to that problem. And maybe the school board should step up and kind of take a lead on that, because it's a flagpole that would certainly serve the purpose of making everybody happy, rather than have some people unhappy and other people happy at different times. So thank you.
For that. At this time, we move on to item 13.4, notice of motion being brought forward by Councillor Thompson and myself, but Councillor Thompson for, I'll say, procedural antics. And we're just looking for a seconder for this, please. Councillor Garwood. So Councillor Thompson, at this time I will turn to you.
Sorry. Whereas members of council have received concerns from residents, business owners, and stakeholders who are frustrated with the permitting approval process of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and whereas specifically the concerns raised surrounding the timelines for receiving permits, approvals, and the studies being requested as part of the permit approvals. Be it therefore resolved that a letter be sent to the Honorable Andrea Kanjan, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and the Honorable Graydon Smith, Minister of Natural Resources, and the Honorable Mike Harris Jr., Minister of Red Tape Reduction, requesting a meeting to discuss the ongoing concerns, and further, that a copy of the letter be sent to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario.
And at this time I will turn for comment.
So the genesis of this motion is I received a call from a resident on June 17th, where he had given me a timeline for one of his approvals for a pole barn and an accessory building on his property. He started the approval process on August the 17th, 2023. On September 19th, he received a letter from the NVCA saying that the file deemed complete and gave him a 60 to 90 day timeline. He responded on September 26th asking that when the 60 and 90 days started, he did not receive a response. Finally, on June 17th of this year, he received an approval. 305 days from the original application and 277 days from the time that, according to the NVCA, that the file deemed complete. His concern was, number one, the timeline here, and number two, the lack of correspondence. Since then, as of today, he let me know also that after dealing with our township, it has been passed back to the NVCA saying that it wasn't complete because there was a septic issue that has not been approved by the NVCA, where according to the resident, this was part of the application process and somehow got missed. So I don't think this is good for anybody. It's not good for the NVCA, and it's certainly not good for our residents And I understand that this is not the only complaint. Since I've delved into this, I've heard that we have other complaints from residents, and hopefully that we can get together on this and find some solutions. The resident here, you know, he's told me that since the application process, his costs, like in anybody that's done a building project recently knows it's very difficult in keeping your costs under control. His costs have gone up between 50 and 100% since he began the application process. I think that we can do better on this.
Councillor Fisher?
I as many of you know, I sit on the NVCA. I'm the council member on the NVCA, and this is the first I've heard of this particular incident. I've actually talked to many residents about their experiences with the NVCA, and frankly, in a few cases, I think I've been able to insert myself, and we've had some really positive outcomes. So where I don't doubt that there are delays, I think that maybe it's premature, Councillor Thompson, to be writing a letter when this is really the first time I'm hearing these incidences. You know, as somebody who sits on the board, these are things that I could certainly take to them and discuss with the management at the NVCA. Not unlike your position at the library, where you're the one and we've talked about this several times, you're the one to go through to discuss. You know, that would be my position with the NVCA. So I'm not in denial that there may be some issues out there. As a matter of fact, I've heard of this before. But you know, these particular instances, if anyone had these happen within their respective wards, I would expect it to be forwarded to myself, right? So that I could bring them to the board. You know, we meet regularly, and I've, in my short time with the NVCA, I found them to be very open, and frankly, I would say I'm on the phone with them several times a month discussing different files. So I'm not denying this individual's claims or other claims. I think that it's a bit premature to start having letters written like that when we're really not going through the typical course of action. I think if you were in my position, you'd probably agree based upon things said previously.
Thank you. And Councillor Fisher, I did send you a voicemail on June 27th and an email on June 27th, to which you did not respond to either. I did bring this to your attention and did ask if you had any concerns at that time, and you did not respond. So I did have respect for your position as our appointed board member and did offer opportunity at that time. Councillor Fisher did reach out to me with this concern, and in that conversation, I began to express to him the concerns I've been hearing for a decade. Concerns that I took and have gone through numerous avenues to find some sort of accountability and have our residents' questions answered. I have gone to our ministers and understanding that the NVCA, a portion of their accountability lies with the MNRF and a portion of their accountability lends with the MOECP. And when I call the MOECP and the appropriate minister, they pass me off to the next one. When Minister Urick was in place, we actually, minutes before COVID, had him agreeing to come stand at the menacing wetlands to understand what the NVCA and what our watershed is. I have brought forward numerous times. This council even took the opportunity to withhold payment, understanding our residents' concerns. So this is not the first time that this has been brought forward. This is, in my opinion, every time there seems to be traction, every time Springwater Council starts to, I want to say, have a ministerial ear, whether it's a delegation or whatever it is, then all of a sudden there's a cabinet shift or there's a municipal election and it feels like we're starting all over again. More recently, and I do apologize, I sent an email from a resident to members of council minutes before this meeting, so I do apologize. I did not receive it before that. But the concerns aren't specific to this one individual, but the concerns are consistent with our residents. It's the timing. It's the, you know, when you hear they want studies that cost over $10,000 and it's a culvert replacement, or if it's a business expansion, or if it's a deck, like there are the time lapse between when a resident puts something forward and when the permitting happens, there's often times that it's residents that, and the NVCA has been sitting here before us and saying it goes two ways. There are times where residents, it's a priority to them and then it's not. And I get that. But understanding also that there are permits that the NVCA requires, but they are not required to inspect. So whether it's septic replacements, pools, sheds, decks, and celery buildings, the NVCA requires a permit for that, but they're not required to inspect it. So whether it's a cash grab or not, it's red tape. If there's no inspection, it's red tape. So what this motion is doing is saying our residents have had enough. I've had enough of saying, when a resident says, what can I do? I have to say, I don't know. I've gone to the ministry, I've gone to the NVCA, I've tried to advocate for you. This is simply us as this council putting the same, and yes, I get it, it's redundant, it's repetitive, it feels like the same motion, but we need to continue to try. We need to ensure that, I'm cognizant of the fact that I sit amongst colleagues from across Ontario and the county of Simcoe who have collaborative working relationships with their CAs. There are CAs in Ontario that do have great working relationships with their municipalities. However, I continue to hear from our residents that the relationship between residents, businesses and stakeholders in the township, the relationship's fractured. And we need to find a way to fix that. So this to me is signaling that, and hopefully through this avenue, we can find a solution for our residents. It's simply a letter, and I'm just asking for support on it this evening. Councillor Thompson and then Fisher. Garwood.
Through the chair to Councillor Fisher. Councillor Fisher, my apologies if I didn't go through you. I noticed that you'd missed the last couple of meetings with the NVCA, and I know you work full time and I know you're busy. I chose to deal directly with Mr. Hebner on this, and he's here tonight. And when I contacted him and shared with him this situation, he was very helpful. I thank him for that. My intent here tonight is not to blame anybody. My intent here tonight is to find solutions that's going to benefit us, benefit them, and benefit us in the future. I've got great respect for the NVCA. I was at the Willow Creek when they were awarded a grant from the province a couple of weeks ago. It was a great ceremony. It was well attended. I think they do great work in our community. But I think that something's broken here, and I think we all need to get together and find some solutions. To me, this is not acceptable. Like this, this resident has been put in a situation by us that to me is just not acceptable.
I have Councillors Fisher and then Garwood.
Well, a bit to unpack there. Well, Councillor Thompson, what's kept me away from 2 meetings this year, that's my business, frankly, and don't make assertions about my work life and my family life. But, I would ask that you go through me with the NVCA, but if you choose to go around me and speak directly to Mr. Hebner, that's just fine. As for hearing from the mayor on Thursday, yes, I did get a voicemail from you. I would have liked to have had it before the motion was on the agenda, right? I'm always open for discussion, particularly when it pertains to the NVCA. Also, if this has been an ongoing problem, which you say it has, I ask you, did you have any luck bringing it to the NVCA when you sat on the board?
Thank you. And the assumption that you're always open for discussion for the NVCA, again, that was June 27th, and I did not hear back from you. So the accusation that we're not going through, or I'm not going through the board member, again, I do have respect for the position that you hold on that, and I did go through that avenue and it was unsuccessful. When I sat on the board, absolutely, I did not have success in trying to push this forward when I sat on the board, and which is why I'm seeking an alternative avenue. I did have success when it was last term with Mayor Hughes in Oro-Medonte and the Mayor of Clearview. We were working together to try and come up with a united front. I am currently working with the Mayor of Essa, the Mayor of Oro, the Mayor of Clearview, and hoping to branch out into other member municipality watersheds, and will continue to do so. And as we all have While we all live in Springwater, we have connections outside of our municipality. So there are times where people reach out to you and say, you know, hey, do you have experience with this? And I'm happy to work with them. So this is an absolute, I don't want to, no, it's become a passion of mine. I do want to see this, and I want to make sure that it's during this term. I hope that there's not another cabinet shift and that these people stay in place so that once we do get their ear, it's not what happened with us with Minister Urick. Councillor Fisher, you follow on.
Again, I'm not being contentious with you, Mayor Coughlin. If there are issues, I would like them brought to me. And frankly, I have to disagree. Yes, after it was a motion, it was on our agenda. This is when I hear from a member of council. If there were incidences that have been systemic and long-term, I've only fairly recently joined the NVCA. I would like to hear about them with file numbers, right? I've had file numbers provided to me by members of the public who were having issues, and I've been able to contact the NVCA and find, in some cases, resolution. I've also found sometimes that they were missing information that they hadn't provided to the NVCA, but I was able to investigate it with the proper file numbers and with following up with the very willing staff from the NVCA, I might add. So again, I don't want to belabor the point, but if it was an SSEA issue, I know I'd contact that member, and I would do so in a timely fashion. So anyway, I'm not disagreeing that there may be issues, and there more than likely are. I don't disagree with you, but I just think that a normal course of action to go through the member who could bring it directly to the NVCA, and if that were to fail, I would be the first one to admit it. I would probably be very frustrated, and I would be frankly, I would support your motion, but I would like it if we exhausted the regular, course of action first. So.
And as what we will recall, during our last cycle of budget, we did exhaust that avenue. We did ask the NVCA to report back on how many permits have been how many permits have been applied for within the township, how many dollars in fees have been received, and that information wasn't given to us. We asked for the actual turnaround, and it was the 60 to 90 days, whether they're mandated, and that wasn't provided. So that's when this council just chose to withhold payment. So this isn't new information. This is an additional avenue to what we've already tried. We've already exhausted that avenue and it didn't work. So residents are asking us to continue and to find another way. I have councillors Garwood, Moore, and Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. For the two budgets that this council has been a part of, we've had this conversation. So this is not new news. While all of us weren't on the last council, I remember sitting and watching budget deliberations last term. And again, this has been a conversation at the table each year. This is not new news. Anytime a resident in my ward reaches out to me, not so much recently, there hasn't been a lot, but in the first year or so of this term, I took those concerns to our board member at the time, which was the mayor. And again, while the mayor could advocate strong as she could, nothing changed. So we sit here and talk about how we are in the customer service business. Would it be acceptable for our municipal staff to not answer their email or the phone or respond back to residents in a timely manner? No, because taxpayers are paying for those staff members, just as taxpayers are paying for the NVCA's bill. It's no different. So again, this motion here is not saying, in my mind, anything overly negative. It's saying, let's communicate with our provincial partners, as we recently have. I talked about it on the last agenda, an exact example of when this council wrote a letter and sent communication to the province. Something meaningful happened in regards to the cultural and heritage area. Again, completely separate, but that's an example of when we connect with our provincial partners. And in addition here, I don't think every single member is sitting up here and only going through the members that are sitting on various committees. I have many conversations with the SSCA, some that include Councillor Alexander and some that do not. Many members have conversations with the library board, as we very much recently have spoken about. They don't all go through Councillor Thompson. So that is not a requirement that I'm aware of, and if it is, then I apologize. I have not personally had many conversations with NVCA staff, but if we have to send concerns to the board representative, that means there's an issue. If we have residents coming to us, that means there's an issue. How do we get to the bottom of that? Write the letter, have the communication, show our residents that we are hearing the concerns that they are having and that we are trying to do something about it. It's not saying that we think the NVCA is doing a bad job by any means, but we are holding them accountable like we hold the library accountable, like we hold the SSCA accountable, and all of our other service partners that we spend municipal dollars on every year to fund.
I have Councillors Moore and then Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Two things. So in the 6 years that I've been sitting here, I can honestly say I haven't had a single complaint about the NVCA. Not a single complaint brought to me. I see the work that they do. I see Fort Willow, of course. I see Camp Tiffin or Tiffin Conservation Area, which is all near me. So I see all that great work. I see them come before us every year. I see the concerns that we've presented to them in the past where we did withhold funds. I've seen the restructuring happen in the last year. And then, but I'm not discounting that there are probably certain issues that have come up like they will with really any business, and should be addressed in a timely manner. I think this letter is an overreach. And I do think I would like to give the NVCA the opportunity to respond to the file. Because I think the file issue, so the grassroots issue with files and file numbers is one thing, but a county-wide issue is something different. So if you're speaking about other municipalities having issues, then the county should write a letter. You know, get together then with your county colleagues and then write a letter if it's a consensus among your colleagues there. But at the municipal level, I think we address files, we follow the chain of command, we go to the NVCA management, we say, and I agree this has been tried and maybe unsuccessful, but that doesn't mean you stop trying. So for now, right now, I feel like this letter is an overreach. And I would prefer, and maybe this council sends a letter to the NVCA and let them know officially where we are disappointed.
Thank you for that. And there has been a letter previously sent from this municipality to the NVCA expressing that. And in anticipation of this motion not being supported because my name's attached to it, this is common practice on this table. When we have an issue with a doctor, we have an issue with whoever it is, we move from this table to the whatever minister it is. This is common practice at this table. This has been done numerous times. And as I can, if council would like me to, I have 5 letters from 5 separate residents, one of which I was able to share with you this evening. And if you would like me to read, this is not about one specific. This conversation was brought forward from one specific, and these 5 I've copied and pasted from text messages. I simply reached out to members of the public that I had been working with saying, hey, I have this on the agenda tonight. Sorry for not giving you any notice, but if you could just give me a snapshot of your concern. I'm anticipating some pushback, even though this is generic and it's something that we do all the time. My name is attached to it. So if council would like me to read these letters to ensure that there's more than one complaint, I am not bringing this forward. This is not an overreach. This is simply 2 years into a term with 2 years left. I have tried this time and time before. We had traction, and like I said, an election happened, ministers were shuffled, and I just don't want to drop the ball for our residents. We have continued to move down one path and it hasn't worked. I think that taking this to the ministerial level, and maybe we can have Minister Kanjan come to this house and hear our residents' concerns. Because again, I'm not suggesting that conservation authorities across Ontario do not serve a purpose. I think there's a great purpose in it, but I have been hearing for a decade that the relationship between the NVCA, our residents, stakeholders, and businesses is fractured, and we need a solution. And I'm simply asking for this council to signal for that solution. So I can begin. The one that I sent you today is 6 pages. This one here states, "Hi, Jen. NVCA have no concept of time. Our application is been in for 2 years. They do not come on site to see or talk to you. They just look at outdated, inaccurate elevations. Example close to you, name that I'll leave out, part of the property is in this flood zone. If any of his property floods, you will not see a roof anywhere in the Municipal flats." I'm going to pause for a second. And while there are members of council that may not hear from people, our Municipal wetland area, Councillor Thompson's area, is more prone to the floodplaining area. When buildings whether it's a house or a barn, have been there for 100+ years, builders have had applications in for years and still waiting. And now, in one case, a person hired their own engineer and the drawings are to be now stamped, even though the prior person didn't require a stamp, and built without NVCA approval because they did not respond in a timely manner. To me, the NVCA mandate should be to maintain and look after natural water courses, maintain creek riverbank, and remove fallen trees and things to that effect at the water level. If they did what they would be much more appreciated in the general public. Where now anyone who has to deal with them has no respect for them. And then the individual's name. All right, the next one. September of 2022, I began working with the NVCA for an application for an addition/garage on my property. I took the NVCA my proposed drawings and was immediately told no. The same day I was told this is why you don't get drawings done before you talk to the NVCA, and why we don't discuss anything with anyone unless you have drawings complete. I had a topographical survey completed on my property, which showed higher elevations on my property. And now, anyway, short story, this house has been here for 100 years. They're also in Ward 3. They wanted to put a garage on their home, and it took them over 2.5 years to get through it. It was 180 days after and 7 months jumping through hoops to satisfy the NVCA. The NVCA told us the garage was not allowed to be attached or furnished in any capacity due to the potential of a 500-year flood. To mitigate the damage, in my personal opinion, I think myself as a landowner should be willing to decide these. I don't want to flood us with this, but council, I have all this information within 3 hours of reaching out to the most recent. I could go back, and if that's what you require, I'm simply saying, this is the step I need to take forward. And I know that there are many, many residents who are excited for us to open this process and start down this path again. I have Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I fully understand the concerns. I've heard from many people, their frustrations with timelines, with potential unreasonable asks. My concern, like what I'm looking at, so there's a couple things. One, they are a conservation authority, so it is mandated. And yes, not all of it is mandated, but our hands are kind of tied. And I don't unfortunately see this government walking back on much in the conservation, given some of the issues that they've had with the green belt. I don't really see them walking back on the CAs. I just don't know if we're going to get the desired outcome by doing this. I almost feel, and we did you completely brought about the fact that we do send letters. I put a motion on the floor to send a letter regarding the library, which I know you had done previously with the County of Simcoe. Nothing's been done with that. So yes, sometimes you do have traction as of the heritage, but sometimes you don't. So I'm not sure this is going to get us to our desired outcome. I think your approach with working with the other mayors, and potentially involving the county and having a hopefully collaborative discussion with the NVCA on how we can address these timelines, how we can come collaboratively work together to get to a desired outcome will push us further along, because I do agree this needs to be pushed along. I fear that just by going the route of a letter, it's just going to then make the situation that much more contentious. We really don't have much power in it as it sits right now, and I don't think the letter is going to get us the power. I would prefer again, I like the more collaborative approach, and I love the fact to work with, mayors in the county and potentially try and move forward that way.
And thank you for that. And I did ask Clerk Ainsworth and gave her the heads up that I would be asking as an amendment to this to be sent to all of our membering municipalities, because as I'm learning, it's more someone has to go first. Someone has to go first. And I have made a commitment to my colleagues that, all right, I will bring it to my council. We'll be the ones to start this ball rolling. And there was a second point, if you could, sorry, I was listening, I was focusing on the second point. There was the first point about the letter not working. And while I do agree that there is a chance that this will not happen, there is a slight chance that something might happen. There is a 100% chance that nothing will happen if we don't send this letter. So while I get it that maybe this is a shot in the dark, I have made a commitment to many people to keep trying. Mayor Thompson and Deputy Cabral.
Could I call the vote, Mayor Coughlin, and record the vote?
I'm just going to turn to members of the table who have not had an opportunity to speak yet, and I don't believe Deputy Cabral has spoke yet.
I haven't, but I've been listening, and I will admit, prior to this term, I did receive calls from folks with respect to delays in getting things done and waiting and what they felt were unreasonable asks. And I will admit also that this particular year, I've had 4 such complaints. Starting in, I think it was around November. There was a couple, and I'll apologize, not 4. One guy phoned me twice, so let's say 3. And there is one in Elmvale that I see the gentleman on a fairly regular basis. He's a business owner who I know has been trying to expand his location for probably the better part of a year by now. 2 years. So, as much as, and I will also say that this is going to be based on Mayor Coughlin, you saying that you would be sending this also to the other municipalities. And if that is the case, and there is an opportunity for something to kind of at least push, and my fear too is going to be that this may come back and bite us, because there may be an additional cost to Springwater Township if the reason why the NVCA cannot accomplish their mandates and tasks is because of something that's they're not able to do there. And I do get that sometimes residents don't provide the information on time, but I also recall sitting here where we were told that they were meeting their timelines in a very reasonable fashion. And I think it was pretty close to 90% of the time, except for the fact that the window of opportunity was 90 days. So that really, to me, brought up a bit of a question. So with all due respect to the NVCA, and I have to also, all due respect to Councillor Fisher, I think maybe it was a bit of a misstep that Councillor Fisher wasn't brought into the fold prior to, just as a courtesy thing, because this is an ongoing issue that maybe the mayor and myself are quite familiar with, and maybe Councillor Moore as well. Yes, but I would have to admit that Councillor Fisher would not be aware of that to the same extent that we are. So I don't see it necessarily as premature. I see it as an opportunity to maybe have some dialogue with the ministry. And if they do, great. If they don't, well, then they don't. So I think I'm going to have to support this.
Thank you. The vote has been called. And Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I do just want to confirm, based on the mover's request, the motion has been amended slightly. There was an addition to including the Honorable Mike Harris, Jr., Minister of Red Tape Reduction, to the list of ministers that would be requested for a meeting. In addition to that, that the letter be sent to the Premier of Ontario as well as all NVCA member municipalities. And a recorded vote was requested by Councillor Thompson.
And if this is a procedural, we can do that. Unfortunately, the vote has been called. Oh, yeah.
It's a request and you may have missed it. And if you're not okay with it, that's your call. It was to have it go to the county as well.
Oh, and the county Simcoe. Thank you for that. And that has been added. So I will now turn to Clerk Ainsworth for the recorded vote.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood,
Yes.
Councillor Alexander,
Yes.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Fisher,
Oh,
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
Yes.
and Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you for that. Council, are there any other further notices of motion? And any items for future consideration? Notice of motion, Councillor Moore.
To Clerk Ainsworth, do I have to mention my motion for September now? I'm good? Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm not doing that.
Any items for future consideration? Not seeing any. At this time, we'll move on to our bylaws, and may I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws, please? I have Councillor Garwood and Councillor Alexander, that the bylaws listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2024-057, appointment of the Huronia West OPP Detachment Board Member for the 2022-2026 term. 2024-058, to amend the committee appointments bylaw 2022-093. 2024-059, declare surplus lands and sell Spence Avenue. 2024-060, Canada Community Building Fund Agreement. 2024-061, amend development charge bylaw. 2023-070, 2024-062, establish terms of reference for property standards committee. 2024-063, OP 2024-02196, Ann Street North. 2024-064, implement the septic system reinspection program for Orr Lake. 5000-390, ZB 2024-008, Block 60, Plan 51M-430. 5000-391, ZB 2024-003, which is 1196 Ann Street North. 5000-392, ZB 2024-012, and that's 543 Ann Street North. 5000-393, ZB 2024-010, Midhurst Heights. Councilor, are there any questions on any of the bylaws before us? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please? I have Councilors Moore and Thompson. That bylaw 2024-065 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on July 3rd, 2024, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And that has carried. And our our adjournment, please. Mover and seconders, Councilors Garwood and Moore, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 9:35 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on September 4th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Staff, are you not going to put your hand up for that one too? That has been carried. Thank you very much.